The alchemist's disappearance remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. In the heart of the medieval world, a brilliant mind, on the verge of unlocking the philosopher's stone, vanished without a trace. Was it an escape from persecution or a deliberate retreat to protect dangerous knowledge? Was the secret so profound, so dangerous, that it required total concealment? Among the notes left behind, a forgotten ritual may hold the answers to questions about life, death, and immortality. As centuries pass, the mystery deepens and the search for answers continues, uncovering the alchemist's shadowy legacy that still captivates the minds of today's seekers. In the quiet corridors of history, there are moments when time seems to stand still, when secrets are whispered behind closed doors, and when entire legacies vanish without a trace. Among these mysteries, few are as perplexing and as chilling as the disappearance of a renowned alchemist in the heart of the medieval world. Imagine the scene. A brilliant mind, one that had dedicated years, perhaps even a lifetime, of study to unlocking the secrets of transmutation, suddenly vanishes from history. No trace, no explanation, no farewell. Just an empty room, scattered notes, and the lingering question. What was so important, so dangerous, that it required this person to disappear into the folds of time? This was not just any alchemist. This was a figure who had made significant strides in the search for the philosopher's stone, the legendary object believed to transmute base metals into gold and grant immortality. For years, this alchemist had been on the cusp of unlocking the final secret of the stone. Scholars from across the continent sought his wisdom, noblemen funded his experiments, and mystics traveled from far corners of Europe to gaze upon the alchemical processes he had pioneered. His work was revered, and yet, in the midst of his greatest breakthrough, he vanished. Without warning, without a single word of explanation. What could have caused such a disappearance? What was so vital about the work that this alchemist was willing to risk everything, including his life, to protect it? The truth, it seems, is buried beneath layers of myth, half-truths, and forbidden rituals. For centuries, scholars and historians have speculated about what really happened during those final days. Some say it was a desperate escape, driven by the alchemist's fear of persecution by the church, which had long considered the practice of alchemy to be heretical. Others whisper that it was not a flight from danger but a final, deliberate retreat into the shadows to continue his work in secret. The reality is likely far more complex and far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The alchemist's disappearance was not merely the result of external forces. It was an integral part of a much larger and darker narrative that stretches back through the centuries. The true story is one of obsession, of a man who pushed the boundaries of knowledge and sanity in a desperate search for the ultimate truth. The medieval world, with its blend of superstition, mysticism, and early science, was a place where knowledge was both revered and feared. Alchemists, often seen as sorcerers or magicians, occupied a precarious position. On one hand, they were revered for their supposed ability to transmute matter and unlock the secrets of the universe. On the other hand, they were vilified by the church, which viewed their work as dangerous and heretical. Alchemy was seen not only as a science but as a form of spiritual enlightenment, an attempt to unlock the very mysteries of life and death itself. But alchemy was not just about gold. Gold was only a small part of the alchemist's pursuit. More important was the search for the philosopher's stone, the object believed to hold the key to immortality, the ultimate elixir that could transcend human existence. To the alchemists, the stone represented far more than mere material wealth. It was the path to spiritual transcendence, the ultimate goal of transforming not just lead into gold, but the human soul itself into something eternal. The alchemist's work was not just about changing matter. It was about changing the very fabric of existence. And yet, despite centuries of experimentation, the philosopher's stone remained elusive. Some alchemists claimed to have come close, others swore they had succeeded, but the stone itself was never found. Was it an illusion, a metaphor for the unattainable? Or was there something more? Something hidden in the shadows of history, waiting to be uncovered? The alchemist who vanished was not the first to pursue these goals. Throughout history, countless others had walked the same path, driven by the same insatiable thirst for knowledge and power. But what set this particular alchemist apart was not just his brilliance. It was his relentless drive to uncover the ultimate truth. He had taken the ancient teachings of Hermes Trismegistus, the father of alchemy, and pushed them to their breaking point. He had unlocked secrets that others had only dreamed of, delving into the mysteries of matter, energy, and the human soul. But with each new discovery, he found himself standing on the edge of a precipice. The deeper he dug, the more dangerous his work became. The ritual he was conducting when he disappeared was said to be his greatest achievement. It was an attempt to transmute not just metal, but the very essence of life itself. The records of his final experiment, carefully hidden from the public eye, describe a ritual so complex and so dangerous that it could only be performed once. To transmute the human soul was no small feat. It was a task that required absolute mastery over the forces of nature and the unseen realms. Some say that during the ritual, the alchemist was able to momentarily glimpse the truth, the true nature of existence, the secret of life and death, and the very essence of immortality. But at what cost? The ritual, it seems, did not go as planned. As the alchemist reached the climax of his experiment, something went horribly wrong. Was it a mistake? Or was it a deliberate decision to erase himself from history, to protect the knowledge he had uncovered from those who would misuse it? We may never know the full truth, but the disappearance itself speaks volumes. What did the alchemist discover that was so dangerous that it had to be hidden? What secret was he guarding, and why was it so important? Some have speculated that the alchemist's disappearance was not accidental. Perhaps it was a calculated move to protect the knowledge he had uncovered. Others believe that the alchemist was taken, that his work was stolen by those who would stop at nothing to claim it for themselves. In either case, the story of his disappearance raises profound questions about the nature of knowledge, power, and the lengths to which individuals will go to protect their discoveries. And yet, despite the centuries that have passed, the mystery of the alchemist's disappearance endures. The papers he left behind, though cryptic and incomplete, hint at a profound truth. A truth that, if uncovered, could change everything we think we know about alchemy, science, and the very nature of life itself. What was he trying to achieve? Was he truly on the verge of discovering the philosopher's stone? Or was he chasing something far more elusive, something that transcends both material wealth and spiritual enlightenment? As the years go by, the alchemist's legacy continues to cast a shadow over the world of alchemy. His disappearance is but one chapter in a larger story, one that is still being written, even now. His work, though lost to time, continues to inspire new generations of seekers, all driven by the same desire: to unlock the secrets of the universe and transcend the limitations of the human condition. The alchemist's shadow looms large, and perhaps, just perhaps, the answers to the greatest mysteries of life and death lie within his forgotten rituals, waiting to be discovered once more. Alchemy was not just a pursuit of material wealth. To most alchemists, gold was a symbol, not the end goal. It was a medium, a stepping stone to something far more profound and elusive. For centuries, those who practiced the art of alchemy were driven by a singular quest, something more elusive than riches, something that transcended the tangible world. They sought the philosopher's stone, a mystical object that could transmute base metals into gold, yes, but its true promise lay in its ability to grant immortality, to reveal the secrets of the universe, and to unlock the very fabric of existence itself. This stone, more than just a material object, was a symbol of the alchemist's ultimate ambition: to transmute the very essence of life. It was believed that the stone could grant eternal life, not just for the body, but for the soul. Those who possessed it would transcend the natural limits of human existence. They would become beings of unimaginable power, able to shape reality and time itself. To many, it was the ultimate form of knowledge, one that bridged the material and spiritual worlds. Gold, for the alchemist, was not the end of the journey, but the means to an end. The true goal was the transmutation of the self, the purification of the soul, and the elevation of the human spirit. The origins of this quest stretch far back in time, into the depths of ancient civilizations. The idea of transformation, whether of materials or the self, is found in the earliest known alchemical texts, stretching from the Egyptian and Greek worlds to the mystic practices of India and China. It was during these early ages that the first seeds of what would become Western alchemy were planted. It was here that the first alchemists, both revered and feared, began to experiment with the elements, seeking to unlock the secrets of life and death. In ancient Egypt, the priesthood was the custodian of vast knowledge, some of which included an understanding of metallurgy and transmutation. The Egyptians were some of the first to see gold not just as a precious metal, but as a divine substance, closely associated with the gods. They believed gold was the flesh of the sun god, Ra, and that it had the power to transcend the earthly realm. Egyptian alchemists were, in essence, the first to lay the groundwork for the idea that transforming base metals into gold was not simply an exercise in wealth accumulation, but a metaphor for achieving spiritual purity and perfection. One of the most important early figures in alchemy was Hermes Trismegistus, a figure whose legend straddles the line between history and myth. Hermes, often depicted as a god or a wise sage, was credited with writing the Corpus Hermeticum, a collection of texts that laid out the foundations of alchemical thought. These writings, filled with complex symbolism and esoteric language, introduced many of the core principles of alchemy. According to Hermes, the path to enlightenment and transformation could only be achieved through the mastery of certain sacred processes. He described the process of transformation as a series of stages, each one leading to the purification and perfection of the soul. Gold, in this sense, became both a physical substance and a spiritual metaphor, something that represented the ultimate goal of human evolution. The central message of these early teachings was that the material world was not separate from the spiritual realm but was, in fact, a reflection of it. Transformation in the material world, such as the transmutation of lead into gold, was linked to a transformation within the alchemist's own soul. In other words, the work of the alchemist was not just about manipulating substances but about achieving an inner change, purifying the self in a way that reflected the changes happening in the external world. This idea became more pronounced during the rise of Greco-Roman thought, especially during the Hellenistic period. The famous philosopher and mystic Plotinus and others in the Neoplatonic tradition believed in the idea of as above, so below. This belief held that the material and spiritual realms were deeply interconnected, and the transformation of one reflected the transformation of the other. The philosopher's stone, according to this worldview, was not just an object that could turn metals into gold. It was an emblem of cosmic unity, a key to understanding the ultimate structure of the universe. By the time alchemy began to take root in medieval Europe, it had already evolved into something far more complex and enigmatic. Alchemy had moved beyond the ancient Egyptian temples and Greek philosophers, and had become an esoteric discipline practiced in secret, often within the confines of monastic orders or hidden societies. Alchemists were no longer just seeking the transmutation of metals, but were seeking knowledge that could transcend the material world entirely. In the medieval period, alchemists such as Geber, Albertus Magnus, and Roger Bacon began to shape the foundation for what would later be called scientific alchemy. These figures, while firmly entrenched in the spiritual traditions of their time, also embraced the idea that alchemy could be a precursor to modern science. They believed that by unlocking the secrets of the elements, they could not only transmute materials but also achieve a deeper understanding of the natural world. The pursuit of gold was not just the pursuit of wealth, but the pursuit of knowledge, a key to understanding the very laws of nature. This mystical aspect of alchemy became even more pronounced with the emergence of the concept of the philosopher's stone during the 12th and 13th centuries. The stone became an allegory for ultimate wisdom, representing the pinnacle of human understanding. But even more so, it symbolized the alchemist's hope for immortality, not through the preservation of the body, but through the transcendence of the soul. This was the true goal behind the quest for the stone: to achieve spiritual enlightenment and to be granted eternal life, free from the constraints of the material world. But why was gold so central to this quest? What made it the key to unlocking the hidden mysteries of the universe? The answer lies in the symbolic significance of gold. In many cultures, gold was not just a metal but a divine substance. In ancient Egypt, it was associated with the gods, and in the biblical traditions, it was a symbol of purity and divine favor. For the alchemists, gold represented perfection, the ultimate material that transcended imperfection. But gold was also a metaphor for the perfected human being. The process of turning base metals into gold was, in essence, a metaphor for the purification of the soul, a process that required years, even decades, of intense spiritual and intellectual work. The pursuit of the philosopher's stone was also a journey into the unknown, where the boundaries between magic and science were often blurred. Alchemists, who were both philosophers and experimenters, walked the fine line between spirituality and empirical science. They believed that by mastering the process of transmutation, they could not only control the physical world, but also unlock the deeper mysteries of the cosmos, those secrets hidden from the average person. And yet, as with all quests for power, the pursuit of the philosopher's stone came with great risks. It was not just the threat of death or punishment that haunted the alchemists. It was the very nature of the stone itself. Was it even possible to create? Was it worth the sacrifice? Was the pursuit of immortality a noble one, or a path to damnation? Many of the greatest alchemists of the time, such as Nicholas Flamel and Paracelsus, were rumored to have come close to discovering the stone's secret, but none could claim true success. The journey was one of both wonder and danger, a constant tension between hope and despair. As the centuries passed, the story of the philosopher's stone became intertwined with the broader mythology of alchemy. Some believed it was a hoax, a legend invented by the alchemists themselves to keep their secrets safe. Others believed it was real, hidden away in some secret chamber, waiting to be rediscovered. Yet, for those who continued to practice alchemy, the search for the stone remained a lifelong obsession. They were not just after gold. They sought the ultimate truth, the key to understanding life itself. In the end, the true nature of the philosopher's stone remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Was it a mere legend, an allegory for spiritual growth and enlightenment? Or was it, as many alchemists believed, the key to unlocking the deepest secrets of the universe? Whatever the truth may be, the pursuit of alchemy was not just a quest for wealth or power. It was a search for knowledge, for wisdom, and for the very meaning of existence itself. And in that search, the alchemists of the past left behind a legacy that still captivates and inspires to this day. The history of alchemy does not begin with the grand palaces and secret laboratories of medieval Europe. It does not start in the whispered corners of forbidden books or within the hallowed chambers of royal courts. Instead, it begins far earlier, in the heat of the ancient world, where civilizations were already toiling to understand the fundamental nature of the universe, often through a mystical, experimental lens that sought to fuse the material and the spiritual. The journey into the ancient roots of alchemy takes us through the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and later, the Islamic Golden Age, cultures that laid the intellectual and philosophical groundwork for the alchemical tradition. The earliest origins of alchemy trace back to ancient Egypt, a civilization that believed in the profound connection between the physical and spiritual realms. The Egyptians, known for their monumental achievements in architecture, mathematics, and medicine, also developed a complex understanding of metals and materials that would later form the foundation of alchemical practice. The Egyptians saw metals not simply as substances to be manipulated for economic gain, but as elements deeply connected to divine forces. The most revered of these metals was gold, which was considered the flesh of the sun god, Ra gold. In the Egyptian worldview, symbolized divine power, purity, and immortality. But it was not just about gold itself. It was what gold represented: the transcendence of the earthly realm and the divine order of the cosmos. This mystical perspective on metals and materials would have profound implications for the development of alchemy. In the tombs of Egyptian pharaohs, precious materials were placed with the dead to ensure their immortality, and sacred texts referred to the transformation of the human soul through various processes, which can be seen as early forms of alchemical thought. Egyptian priests, skilled in the arts of embalming, also had knowledge of chemistry, metallurgy, and the transformation of materials. Though their practices may not have been called alchemy at the time, they were working with the same principles that would guide later alchemists. The belief that the physical world could be transmuted into something higher, whether in the form of purified gold, immortality, or spiritual enlightenment. However, it was the Greeks who would most significantly shape the intellectual foundations of alchemy as we know it. The ancient Greek philosophers, such as Empedocles and Democritus, were among the first to formulate theories of matter that went beyond mere speculation or myth. They sought to understand the fundamental elements that made up the universe and the nature of transformation. Empedocles, for instance, proposed that all matter was made up of four basic elements: earth, air, fire, and water, which would later become central to alchemical thought. This idea of elements, combined with Greek philosophical ideas of harmony, balance, and the interconnectedness of all things, laid the groundwork for alchemical thinking, which would be based on a similar belief that everything in the universe is connected and that transformation could lead to a higher state of being. The Greeks also had a deep connection to the spiritual world, which blended seamlessly with their early scientific inquiries. They believed that the soul, much like metals and other substances, could undergo a form of purification and transformation. This led to a worldview in which physical processes were seen as reflections of spiritual or cosmic forces. Alchemy, in its early Greek form, wasn't solely concerned with turning base metals into gold. It was about transmuting the soul and the spirit, about achieving a higher state of being through the transformation of the material world. This metaphysical component was fundamental to the Greek approach to alchemy and would later be inherited by medieval and Renaissance alchemists. One of the most influential figures in the development of alchemical thought was Hermes Trismegistus, a legendary figure who is said to have lived during the early centuries of the Common Era. Hermes Trismegistus is a combination of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth, and his teachings form the foundation of the Hermetic tradition, which is closely intertwined with alchemy. The texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, known as the Corpus Hermeticum, offer a fusion of Greek philosophy, Egyptian mysticism, and early alchemical thought. These writings described a vision of the universe that was both spiritual and material, and they emphasized the idea that the universe was governed by hidden laws, which could be discovered through a process of purification and transmutation. The most famous concept in the Hermetic writings is the idea of as above, so below, which expresses the belief that the macrocosm, the universe, and the microcosm, the individual, are interconnected. In other words, the transformation of the physical world could mirror and influence the transformation of the human soul. The concept of the philosopher's stone, which would later become central to medieval alchemy, has its origins in these Hermetic teachings. According to these texts, the philosopher's stone was not simply an object that could turn base metals into gold. It was a symbol of the ultimate wisdom and spiritual enlightenment, representing the power to transform both the material world and the soul. As Greek and Egyptian knowledge began to spread across the Mediterranean and into the Islamic world, the seeds of alchemy took root in a fertile intellectual climate. The Islamic Golden Age, spanning from the 8th to the 14th centuries, saw the rise of some of the most influential alchemists in history. These scholars were deeply inspired by the writings of Hermes Trismegistus and sought to develop their own understanding of alchemical processes, often blending Greek philosophy with Islamic mysticism and Arabic scientific knowledge. Alchemists such as Jabir ibn Hayyan, known as the father of chemistry, made groundbreaking advancements in the field, developing new techniques for distillation, crystallization, and purification. Jabir's work, along with that of other Islamic alchemists, helped to preserve and expand upon the alchemical ideas of the ancient Greeks and Egyptians. These scholars believed that the natural world was imbued with divine order, and by understanding and harnessing the forces of nature, one could achieve great power, both in the material world and in the spiritual realm. Like their Greek predecessors, Islamic alchemists believed that transformation was at the heart of alchemical practice, not just of substances but of the soul as well. Their goal was not merely to transmute metals but to understand the deep connection between the physical world and the divine. They saw alchemy as a way of purifying both matter and spirit, and they sought to understand the divine architecture of the universe itself. This period of intellectual ferment in the Islamic world helped to preserve much of the ancient alchemical knowledge that would later be transmitted to Europe. When the works of Islamic alchemists were translated into Latin and other European languages during the Middle Ages, they sparked a renewed interest in alchemical practices and ideas. The synthesis of Greek, Egyptian, and Islamic knowledge formed the foundation of Western alchemy, which would flourish in Europe during the Renaissance. Despite the advances of Islamic alchemy, it was the medieval European alchemists who would bring alchemical practice to its most mystical and esoteric heights. These thinkers, often working in isolation or in secret societies, believed that alchemy was a divine pursuit, one that required both intellectual rigor and spiritual purity. For them, the transformation of base metals into gold was not just an intellectual exercise, but a quest for immortality, spiritual enlightenment, and ultimate union with the divine. In tracing the roots of alchemy, we can see that its origins were never solely about material gain. The alchemists of ancient Egypt, Greece, and the Islamic world were not just attempting to manipulate the world around them. They were trying to unlock the hidden mysteries of the cosmos. The very idea that matter could be transformed, purified, and elevated was grounded in the belief that the universe itself was a reflection of divine order. Alchemy, at its core, was about connecting the material with the spiritual, transforming the self as much as the substances in the laboratory. The secrets that these ancient alchemists sought were not just secrets of matter, but of existence itself. Even today, we are still drawn to these ancient questions, the search for meaning, for transformation, for knowledge that transcends the ordinary limits of the material world. The legacy of these early alchemists lives on in our fascination with the unknown, in our attempts to understand the deepest forces of nature, and in our desire to achieve something greater than ourselves. Their journey, begun thousands of years ago, continues to resonate, challenging us to look beyond the veil and seek the transformative power that lies hidden in both the world around us and within ourselves. The figure of Hermes Trismegistus, known as the thrice great Hermes, occupies an almost mythical place in the annals of alchemical and esoteric thought. Revered by many as the archetype of wisdom and a direct link between the Egyptian and Greek traditions, Hermes is at once a god, a sage, and an eternal symbol of hidden knowledge. His name is a fusion of two powerful figures: the Greek god Hermes, known as the messenger and guide of souls, and the Egyptian god Thoth, the deity of wisdom, writing, and magic. Hermes Trismegistus represents the synthesis of ancient Egyptian and Greek thought, combining the mystical and divine wisdom of Egypt with the philosophical and intellectual rigor of Greece. In the ancient world, Hermes Trismegistus was thought to be a direct intermediary between the gods and humanity, the keeper of secrets that transcended ordinary understanding. His teachings were preserved in a series of texts known as the Corpus Hermeticum, a collection of writings that blended mysticism, philosophy, and practical alchemy. The Corpus Hermeticum is one of the most important sources of Hermetic thought, and within it lie some of the most profound ideas that would later influence alchemy, magic, and Western esoteric traditions. The texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus explore themes such as the nature of the cosmos, the relationship between humanity and the divine, and the process of transformation, both material and spiritual. They present a worldview in which the material and spiritual realms are not separate, but intimately connected, with each reflecting the other. The idea that as above, so below, encapsulates this belief, suggesting that the microcosm, the individual, mirrors the macrocosm, the universe, and that understanding the divine order of the cosmos can lead to personal and spiritual transformation. For the alchemists, this principle was essential, as they believed that by understanding the secrets of the universe, they could manipulate and transform the material world, achieving both spiritual enlightenment and material wealth. The teachings of Hermes Trismegistus also present a vision of the cosmos as a living, breathing organism, one in which everything is connected and in constant flux. This worldview sees the universe not as a static place, but as an ever-changing, dynamic system of forces that interact with each other in mysterious ways. It is this dynamic view of the cosmos that gave rise to alchemical ideas, where substances were seen not as inert, fixed entities, but as living, mutable elements that could be transformed into something greater. The alchemist, in this sense, was not merely a scientist, but a spiritual practitioner, using the tools of the material world to elevate the soul and align it with the divine order of the universe. One of the key elements of Hermetic thought is the idea of divine creation. In the Hermetic texts, the universe is described as being created from a single, divine source, which is often referred to as the One or the Source. This One is both immanent and transcendent, present in all things, yet beyond all things. It is through the process of emanation that the One gives birth to the various levels of existence, from the highest spiritual realms to the lowest material forms. The alchemist's task, in this worldview, is to ascend through these levels of existence, purifying and transforming both the self and the substances around them in order to return to the divine source. The idea of emanation, where all things arise from a singular source, parallels the process of alchemical transformation. Just as the alchemist seeks to transmute base metals into gold, they are also attempting to transmute the soul, elevating it from its base, material state to a higher, purer form. The philosopher's stone, the ultimate goal of alchemy, is not just a physical substance but a symbol of this divine transformation. It represents the alchemist's ultimate goal of achieving spiritual enlightenment and returning to the divine source. In addition to the philosophical and spiritual teachings, the Corpus Hermeticum also contains practical advice for those who wish to embark on the path of transformation. It is here that we find the foundation for many of the symbolic rituals and practices that would later be adopted by alchemists throughout the ages. The Hermetic texts describe various methods of purification, meditation, and spiritual exercises designed to elevate the practitioner's consciousness and bring them closer to the divine. These practices are often described in metaphorical terms, as the Hermetic worldview sees the process of transformation as one that involves both physical and spiritual purification. The alchemist's work, therefore, is not just about manipulating materials but also about purifying the soul and aligning it with the divine will. Hermetic teachings also place a strong emphasis on the role of the mind in the process of transformation. The mind, according to Hermes Trismegistus, is a powerful tool that can shape the world around us. By cultivating a mind that is pure, focused, and aligned with the divine, the practitioner can access hidden knowledge and gain the ability to transform both themselves and the material world. This idea resonates deeply with the alchemical tradition, where mental discipline, focus, and the ability to see beyond the surface of things are essential qualities for those who wish to uncover the hidden secrets of the universe. The influence of Hermes Trismegistus on later alchemists cannot be overstated. His teachings would become the bedrock upon which the alchemical tradition in the West was built. From the Middle Ages through the Renaissance and beyond, the writings attributed to Hermes would inspire countless alchemists, mystics, and philosophers. Figures such as Paracelsus, Nicholas Flamel, and John Dee were deeply influenced by Hermetic thought, and they incorporated its principles into their alchemical practices. Even more importantly, the Hermetic worldview shaped the very nature of alchemical work. Alchemy, as practiced by these later figures, was not simply a science of transmutation. It was a spiritual path, a means of aligning oneself with the divine order of the universe. In the medieval period, as alchemy began to take root in Europe, the influence of Hermes Trismegistus became even more pronounced. The Corpus Hermeticum, along with other Hermetic writings, was translated into Latin, and it became a key text for scholars and alchemists alike. The teachings of Hermes were seen as a bridge between the ancient world and the Christian tradition, offering a way to reconcile the mystical and philosophical teachings of the past with the religious and intellectual currents of the present. The Renaissance, with its renewed interest in classical knowledge and the esoteric traditions of the ancient world, saw a revival of Hermetic thought. It was during this period that alchemy was fully integrated into the intellectual landscape of Europe, and the Hermetic ideas of transformation and spiritual ascent were embraced by many of the greatest thinkers of the time. The popularity of Hermeticism during the Renaissance is also reflected in the growth of secret societies and mystical orders. The Hermetic teachings, with their emphasis on hidden knowledge and the pursuit of spiritual enlightenment, resonated deeply with the ideals of these secret groups. The Rosicrucians, Freemasons, and other esoteric societies, all of which flourished during this time, were heavily influenced by the ideas of Hermes Trismegistus. For these groups, the pursuit of alchemical knowledge was not just about achieving material wealth or power. It was about attaining spiritual enlightenment and aligning oneself with the divine forces of the universe. However, while the Hermetic tradition continued to inspire and guide alchemists for centuries, it also raised profound questions about the nature of knowledge, power, and transformation. Was the goal of alchemy to transcend the material world and achieve spiritual purity, or was it a more practical pursuit, aimed at manipulating nature for material gain? The answers to these questions would vary greatly depending on the individual alchemist and their worldview. For some, the philosopher's stone represented the ultimate prize, the key to eternal life and spiritual transcendence. For others, it was a symbol of the hidden forces of the universe, a power to be unlocked through careful study and experimentation. In the end, the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus offer a worldview that transcends the limits of time and space. His ideas about transformation, purification, and the relationship between the material and spiritual realms continue to influence not only alchemy but also modern esoteric thought. The Hermetic path, with its emphasis on the pursuit of hidden knowledge and the elevation of the soul, remains a powerful symbol for those who seek to understand the mysteries of the universe. In the words of Hermes himself, "The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding." For those who dare to listen and seek the hidden truths of the cosmos, the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus remain as relevant today as they were in the distant past. The early centuries of alchemical thought saw the discipline move through various transformations, largely shaped by the intellectual currents of the time and the prevailing cultural influences. From its origins in the mystical practices of the Egyptians and Greeks, through the Hermetic teachings that united those worlds, alchemy began to evolve into something more systematic, more scientific, and yet deeply spiritual. By the medieval period, alchemy had shifted from a pursuit of mystical transformation into a more formalized and complex practice, carried forward by an eclectic group of thinkers, practitioners, and visionaries. These figures were not merely pursuing material transformation, but were deeply engaged in a search for spiritual transcendence, understanding, and a kind of hidden knowledge that had the potential to alter the very fabric of the human experience. This transformation was heavily influenced by the rise of the Islamic Golden Age, a period in which alchemy experienced profound advancements, and later, by the fusion of these ideas into the intellectual milieu of medieval Europe. During the early years of the Islamic Golden Age, from the 8th to the 14th centuries, the scientific, philosophical, and mystical traditions of the Greek and Persian worlds were synthesized and expanded upon by Muslim scholars, creating a fertile ground for the development of alchemical thought. Many of the great Islamic alchemists, such as Jabir ibn Hayyan, played a central role in shaping the trajectory of alchemy as both a science and a mystical practice. Jabir, known as the father of chemistry, wrote extensively on the philosophical underpinnings of alchemy, as well as on practical methods for purification and transmutation of materials. His works became the cornerstone upon which later alchemical practitioners would build their own understanding. What made the Islamic alchemists distinct was their ability to blend the ancient traditions of alchemical practice with the intellectual heritage of the Greeks and Romans, combined with an intense curiosity about the material world and a desire to transform it. While they preserved the philosophical elements of alchemy, its mystical underpinnings and the idea of transforming the self, their approach was grounded in a more empirical methodology. Islamic alchemists were deeply interested in the processes of nature, from the study of minerals to the distillation of liquids, to the purification of metals, and they developed methods that would later become central to modern chemistry. One of the key concepts that emerged from this period was the idea of the elixir. Islamic alchemists believed that through the proper use of alchemical processes, it was possible to create substances that could grant the practitioner wisdom, longevity, and even immortality. They saw alchemy not merely as an art but as a path to unlocking the hidden powers of nature. This period also witnessed the development of various alchemical tools and processes, such as the use of the alembic, a distillation apparatus, and the concept of tinctures, which were thought to hold the power to transmute substances at their core level. The Islamic Golden Age also saw the rise of a particular tradition of alchemy that would significantly influence the way alchemists in Europe viewed their craft: the synthesis of alchemy with spiritual practices such as Sufism. Sufism, with its emphasis on inner purification and the transcendence of the material world, dovetailed perfectly with the alchemical pursuit of transforming not just metals, but the soul. Many alchemists were also Sufis, seeking to achieve a deeper union with the divine through the work of transmutation, a work that they believed would elevate their own souls along with the materials they worked on. The spiritual and mystical elements of alchemy in the Islamic world continued to resonate across time and geography, as Sufism itself would spread westward, eventually influencing the practice of alchemy in Europe. When these ideas and practices made their way to medieval Europe, the landscape of alchemy began to shift. The intellectual climate in Europe was ripe for the integration of these new ideas, especially during the Renaissance, when there was a resurgence of interest in the classical world and its mysteries. The process of translating Arabic texts into Latin, which began in the 12th century, opened the floodgates for a wave of ancient and medieval alchemical knowledge to enter the European consciousness. Not only did these translations bring with them detailed alchemical techniques, but they also introduced new philosophical and mystical perspectives that would reshape the direction of Western alchemy. One of the most influential alchemists in Europe during this time was Paracelsus, a figure whose radical ideas about alchemy, medicine, and the nature of the human body would have a lasting impact on both alchemical thought and the development of modern science. Paracelsus, who was both a physician and an alchemist, believed that alchemy had the power to heal and purify the body, much as it could transmute metals. He rejected many of the medieval ideas of humors and classical medicine, proposing instead that disease was the result of an imbalance of internal chemicals in the body, which could be corrected through the use of alchemical processes. In his view, the human body was a microcosm of the universe, and just as metals could be purified through alchemical processes, so too could the human soul and body. Paracelsus's ideas extended far beyond simple medicinal practices. He argued that alchemy should not be confined to the realm of theoretical knowledge, but should instead be a practical science that directly benefited humanity. His emphasis on the practical application of alchemical principles marked a distinct departure from earlier mystical approaches, and it influenced the development of chemistry as a distinct scientific discipline. However, for Paracelsus, alchemy remained deeply connected to spiritual and mystical dimensions. His work suggested that the pursuit of knowledge in alchemy could lead not only to physical healing but also to spiritual transformation. The alchemist, he argued, was someone who could tap into the secrets of the natural world, accessing hidden forces that governed both material and spiritual realms. Another important figure in the development of alchemical thought was Nicolas Flamel, a 14th-century French scribe and manuscript seller who was believed to have discovered the secret to the philosopher's stone. While much of Flamel's life is shrouded in legend, he became one of the most famous alchemists in history, primarily due to the claims that he had successfully created the philosopher's stone and achieved immortality. Flamel's story became a part of the larger mythos of alchemy, and his name was associated with the ultimate goal of alchemical practice, the creation of gold and the achievement of spiritual enlightenment. While there is little evidence to support the claim that Flamel discovered the stone, his legacy became intertwined with the idea that the stone could be found through alchemical work, and that this work could unlock the deepest mysteries of the universe. During the Renaissance, alchemy was not simply the work of lone philosophers or mystics. It became a deeply institutionalized pursuit, embedded in the universities, courts, and intellectual circles of Europe. The rise of alchemical societies and secret orders, such as the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons, was a direct result of the growing fascination with alchemy and its promises of spiritual and material transformation. These secret societies saw themselves as custodians of ancient wisdom, and their members often believed that alchemical knowledge could be used to achieve not only personal transformation but societal change as well. For many of these societies, the practice of alchemy was not simply about transmuting metals into gold, but about creating a new world order, one that would be governed by spiritual enlightenment and the principles of divine order. At this time, alchemy began to shift further away from pure mysticism and into the realms of early science. While many alchemists still believed in the mystical properties of the philosopher's stone, they also began to experiment with new techniques, performing laboratory work that laid the groundwork for modern chemistry. These experiments were not only about the physical transformation of materials, but also about understanding the fundamental nature of matter. Alchemists like Robert Boyle, who is often considered the father of modern chemistry, began to challenge the older mystical paradigms and argue for a more systematic, empirical approach to the study of the natural world. Despite this shift toward a more scientific approach, alchemy continued to retain its spiritual aspects, especially in the minds of those who still saw it as a path to enlightenment and higher knowledge. The importance of alchemy during the Renaissance cannot be overstated. It was a time when the boundaries between science, magic, and mysticism were fluid, and the quest for the philosopher's stone encapsulated the pursuit of knowledge that transcended both the material and spiritual realms. Alchemy's legacy continues to resonate even today, not only in the history of science but in the broader cultural consciousness, where its symbols and ideas continue to inspire writers, artists, and seekers of knowledge. The early alchemists, through their experiments and mystical practices, gave birth to a rich and complex tradition that blurred the lines between science and spirituality, offering a vision of the universe in which the material and the divine were inextricably linked, and in which transformation, whether of substances or the self, was the ultimate goal. By the time the Renaissance dawned in the 15th and 16th centuries, alchemy had already deeply penetrated both the intellectual and mystical fabric of Europe. The Renaissance, a period characterized by an intense rediscovery of classical knowledge, brought with it a renewed interest in esoteric practices, particularly alchemy. The ancient traditions of the Egyptians, Greeks, and even the Islamic alchemists, who had laid much of the intellectual groundwork, were once again re-examined, translated, and integrated into the intellectual landscape of the West. This revitalization of alchemical thought would ultimately lead to the intertwining of mysticism and science in ways that would profoundly shape not just the history of alchemy, but the trajectory of modern science itself. During the Renaissance, the alchemical tradition found itself caught between two worlds. On the one hand, there were the deeply mystical, spiritual pursuits of alchemists who believed in the philosopher's stone as a means of spiritual elevation and transformation. These alchemists saw the pursuit of gold, immortality, and enlightenment as a sacred path, an attempt to connect with the divine and attain ultimate knowledge of the universe. On the other hand, the increasing intellectual rigor of the Renaissance pushed alchemy towards a more empirical and experimental approach. No longer confined to the dusty corners of secret societies or monastic orders, alchemy was now practiced more openly in the courts and universities of Europe, with alchemists seeking to understand the fundamental forces of nature in ways that would eventually lead to the birth of modern chemistry and other scientific fields. At the heart of Renaissance alchemy was the figure of Paracelsus, one of the most famous and controversial alchemists of his time. Paracelsus was a physician, philosopher, and alchemist who rejected much of the traditional medical thinking of his day, replacing it with a radical new approach that was rooted in alchemical ideas. For Paracelsus, alchemy was not just the transformation of base metals into gold. It was the transformation of the self, the body, and the soul. He viewed alchemy as a means of purifying the body and curing disease, and he developed new medicinal treatments based on the principles of alchemical transformation. He believed that disease was the result of an imbalance in the body's chemistry, and that the application of alchemical processes could bring balance and healing. This was a revolutionary idea at the time and would lay the foundation for the development of modern pharmacology and medicine. Paracelsus's influence extended far beyond the realm of medicine. His teachings were deeply mystical, emphasizing the importance of spiritual transformation and the purification of the soul. He believed that the alchemist was not just a scientist or healer, but a spiritual practitioner who could use the forces of nature to achieve a closer union with the divine. In this sense, Paracelsus took the mystical roots of alchemy and integrated them into a broader understanding of human health, spiritual well-being, and the nature of the universe. His work was groundbreaking, but it also served to highlight the tension between the mystical and the empirical aspects of alchemy, a tension that would persist throughout the history of the discipline. While Paracelsus was forging new paths in alchemical medicine, another figure who would play a central role in shaping the future of alchemy was the enigmatic Nicholas Flamel. Known primarily for his association with the philosopher's stone and his supposed discovery of the secret to immortality, Flamel's life was shrouded in myth and legend. In reality, Flamel was a scribe and manuscript seller in Paris, but his name became synonymous with alchemical wisdom and the elusive quest for eternal life. The legend of Flamel's discovery of the philosopher's stone became one of the most enduring stories in alchemical lore, representing the idea that the stone, though elusive and mysterious, was within the grasp of the dedicated and wise. Flamel's name became intertwined with the broader mythos of alchemy, where the philosopher's stone symbolized the apex of alchemical knowledge, an object that could grant eternal life, transform base metals into gold, and unlock the deepest secrets of the universe. While there is no concrete evidence that Flamel ever discovered the stone, his legacy serves as a reminder of the allure of alchemy and the intense desire for transcendence that drove alchemists for centuries. The myth of Flamel also represents a common thread in the history of alchemy, the intertwining of mysticism and materialism, with alchemists seeking to not only transcend the physical limitations of the body, but also unlock the secrets of wealth and immortality. The Renaissance also witnessed the rise of a number of secret societies and mystical organizations that were heavily influenced by alchemical teachings. These societies, such as the Rosicrucians and the Freemasons, saw themselves as custodians of ancient wisdom and hidden knowledge. They believed that alchemy was not just about transforming materials, but about transforming society itself. The Rosicrucians, in particular, saw alchemy as a means of bringing about a new world order, one that was governed by spiritual enlightenment and the pursuit of higher knowledge. They believed that through alchemy, humanity could transcend the material world and reach a state of spiritual perfection. This vision of alchemy as a transformative force in society was rooted in the Hermetic traditions that had emerged in antiquity, and it became one of the driving forces behind the development of secret societies and mystical movements in the Renaissance and beyond. At the same time, the growing intellectual curiosity of the Renaissance was beginning to push alchemy towards more scientific pursuits. The increasing emphasis on experimentation and empirical observation led to the development of new tools and techniques that were central to the alchemical process. The alembic, a device used for distillation, became one of the most important instruments in the alchemist's laboratory. Alchemists began to experiment with new substances, performing chemical reactions and observing the results in ways that laid the groundwork for the later development of modern chemistry. While alchemy was still deeply intertwined with mystical and spiritual ideas, the empirical nature of these experiments began to separate alchemy from the purely magical and place it on the path toward modern scientific inquiry. The rise of early scientists such as Robert Boyle, often considered the father of modern chemistry, marked the beginning of a new era for alchemy. Boyle's work on the nature of gases and the formulation of Boyle's law would lay the foundations for the development of modern chemistry. Boyle was deeply influenced by alchemical ideas, but his work sought to move beyond the mystical aspects of alchemy and focus on the systematic study of matter. Boyle's transition from alchemy to chemistry was emblematic of the larger shift taking place during the Renaissance, where alchemy was increasingly seen as a precursor to the scientific method, rather than a mystical or religious pursuit. However, even as alchemy began to move into the realm of scientific experimentation, its spiritual and mystical roots remained a powerful influence. Alchemy's role in the development of modern science was not just about the development of laboratory techniques, but about a worldview that saw the material and spiritual realms as deeply interconnected. Alchemists believed that by understanding the laws of nature, they could also unlock the deeper spiritual truths that govern the universe. This idea of the interconnection between the material and the spiritual world would continue to shape alchemical thought for centuries, even as it evolved into the modern sciences. In the broader cultural context of the Renaissance, the resurgence of alchemy was part of a larger movement toward the rediscovery of ancient wisdom and the pursuit of knowledge. Alchemy, with its deep philosophical roots in ancient Egypt, Greece, and the Islamic world, represented a synthesis of intellectual traditions that transcended the boundaries of religion and science. It embodied the Renaissance ideal of humanism, with its focus on the potential for human beings to achieve greatness through the pursuit of knowledge and self-transformation. The quest for the philosopher's stone, for many alchemists during this period, was not just about the accumulation of wealth or the achievement of immortality. It was about achieving a deeper understanding of the cosmos and one's place within it. Alchemy represented a path towards spiritual enlightenment, a means of uniting the material and the divine. While the scientific aspects of alchemy would eventually give rise to modern chemistry and other sciences, the mystical and spiritual aspects of alchemy continued to resonate with those who saw the pursuit of knowledge as a way to transcend the limits of the human condition. As alchemy entered the modern age, it was no longer just the domain of secretive mystics and esoteric societies. It had become an intellectual and scientific endeavor, with its influence extending far beyond the confines of laboratories and hidden chambers. Yet, the desire for spiritual transcendence, the longing for transformation, remained a central part of alchemy's legacy. The Renaissance, with its emphasis on human potential and the rediscovery of ancient wisdom, provided the perfect environment for alchemy to evolve into both a science and a spiritual pursuit, one that would continue to shape the intellectual and mystical traditions of the Western world for centuries to come. Even today, the allure of alchemy, with its promise of transformation, remains as strong as ever, inspiring those who seek not only to understand the material world, but also to transcend it. The transition from the mystical and spiritual pursuits of alchemy to the more structured and empirical sciences is a process marked by profound shifts in both methodology and worldview. As alchemy began to shape the intellectual landscape of Europe during the Renaissance, it was clear that the boundaries between the mystical and the scientific were becoming increasingly blurred. What had once been the domain of secretive scholars seeking divine wisdom began to take on a more practical and systematic form, laying the groundwork for the rise of modern chemistry, physics, and even psychology. This transformation did not happen in isolation, nor did it occur overnight. It was a gradual evolution that involved both the refinement of alchemical processes and the intellectual challenges posed by emerging scientific thought. Central to this period was the gradual decline of the deeply mystical and spiritual aspects of alchemy, which had been intertwined with the quest for immortality, wealth, and the philosopher's stone. As alchemy moved through the crucible of intellectual scrutiny, its goals became less about the transformation of the soul and more about the transformation of matter itself. The idea that the alchemist could commune with the divine or achieve spiritual transcendence through the manipulation of physical substances was slowly supplanted by the growing emphasis on observation, experimentation, and the scientific method. Alchemists, while still driven by a sense of wonder at the hidden forces of nature, began to shift their focus toward the systematic study of materials and their properties. One of the pivotal figures in this shift was Robert Boyle, whose work in the 17th century is often regarded as the catalyst for the emergence of modern chemistry. Boyle's most famous contribution was Boyle's law, which described the relationship between the pressure and volume of a gas, and his work in general helped lay the foundation for the scientific study of gases and the principles of pressure and volume that are central to modern chemistry. Boyle, while influenced by alchemical traditions, was one of the first to emphasize the importance of experimentation and empirical evidence over mystical or speculative thought. For Boyle, alchemy's true value lay not in the search for gold or immortality, but in its potential to unlock the secrets of the natural world. Boyle's shift away from alchemical mysticism towards empirical science marked a defining moment in the history of alchemy. His work was instrumental in separating the scientific aspects of alchemy from the religious and spiritual dimensions, and in establishing chemistry as a distinct discipline. Boyle was a key figure in the development of the Royal Society of London, which became one of the first institutions dedicated to the promotion of scientific inquiry. The society was founded in 1660, and its members, many of whom were trained in alchemy, sought to promote a more rigorous, evidence-based approach to the study of nature. This institutionalization of scientific research represented a break from the secretive, individualized study of alchemy, moving toward a collective effort to understand the natural world through observation and experiment. However, the path from alchemy to modern science was not linear. Despite Boyle's emphasis on empirical evidence, many alchemists continued to pursue the mystical aspects of their craft, believing that the true purpose of alchemy was not only to study and manipulate matter but to connect with the divine and to transcend the limitations of the human condition. Figures like Isaac Newton, often regarded as the father of modern physics, were deeply influenced by alchemical thought, despite their contributions to the scientific revolution. Newton, in particular, saw alchemy as an essential component of his quest to understand the natural world. In his personal studies, Newton examined the works of ancient alchemists and sought to uncover the hidden laws that governed the cosmos. His interest in alchemy was not simply about turning base metals into gold, but about understanding the fundamental forces that shaped the universe. Newton's alchemical studies were, in a sense, an extension of his interest in the divine architecture of the cosmos. For him, alchemy was a way of seeking the hidden truths that lay behind the veil of material existence. Newton's fascination with alchemy can be seen as part of a broader intellectual climate during the 17th century, where the boundaries between science and mysticism were far from clear-cut. It was a time when some of the greatest minds in history, including Boyle, Newton, and Johannes Kepler, were working at the intersection of these two domains. While Boyle's work helped to firmly establish the scientific method as the cornerstone of modern chemistry, Newton's alchemical investigations reflected the continuing tension between the empirical and the mystical in the scientific revolution. It was only later, in the 18th and 19th centuries, that the divide between alchemy and science would become more pronounced. The 18th century saw the rise of what is now referred to as the Age of Enlightenment, a period characterized by the emphasis on reason, individualism, and scientific inquiry. During this time, many of the ideas that had been central to alchemy began to fade into the background, as new philosophical and scientific paradigms took their place. The Enlightenment thinkers, including figures like Voltaire, Denis Diderot, and Immanuel Kant, were skeptical of the mystical and religious aspects of alchemy, and instead sought to promote a more rational, secular approach to understanding the world. The search for gold, immortality, and divine wisdom, which had once been the driving forces behind alchemical practice, were replaced by a focus on reason, human progress, and the improvement of society. As alchemy became increasingly sidelined by the rise of scientific rationalism, its mystical elements were absorbed into other esoteric traditions, such as Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and the occult. These movements, which flourished during the 17th and 18th centuries, continued to preserve and adapt the ideas of alchemy, even as mainstream science moved away from it. The idea of the philosopher's stone, for example, continued to inspire occult thinkers, who saw it not as a literal substance but as a symbol of spiritual enlightenment and transformation. The Rosicrucians, for instance, were a mystical order that combined elements of alchemy, Christianity, and Kabbalah, and their teachings emphasized the idea of inner transformation through the pursuit of hidden knowledge. In parallel to this decline in the intellectual acceptance of alchemy as a legitimate science, the 19th century saw the development of psychology and other human sciences, which began to explore the mind and consciousness in ways that alchemy had once done. Figures such as Carl Jung, who is perhaps best known for his work on the collective unconscious, saw alchemy as a powerful metaphor for the process of individuation, the journey of self-realization and spiritual awakening. Jung believed that alchemical symbols, such as the philosopher's stone and the process of transmutation, represented the psychological process of transforming the unconscious mind into a more integrated and balanced state. In this sense, alchemy was not just a physical practice but a symbolic journey that reflected the inner transformation of the human psyche. By the 19th and 20th centuries, alchemy had firmly established itself as a subject of historical and philosophical interest, rather than a practical discipline. The work of modern scientists and psychologists had made alchemy seem obsolete in its material pursuits, but its symbolic and metaphysical aspects continued to captivate the imagination of thinkers, writers, and artists. In the realm of literature, authors like Hermann Hesse and J.K. Rowling would later draw on alchemical symbolism, reflecting the ongoing fascination with the idea of transformation and the search for deeper truths hidden beneath the surface of the material world. While alchemy may no longer hold the same prominence in the world of science, its legacy is far from over. The processes of transformation that alchemists once sought to achieve in laboratories are now reflected in modern scientific research, particularly in the fields of chemistry, physics, and medicine. The spiritual quest for enlightenment that alchemists pursued is mirrored in the personal and psychological transformation explored by modern psychology and humanistic philosophy. Alchemy's vision of a world in which the material and spiritual are interconnected continues to resonate in contemporary thought, inspiring those who seek to understand the hidden forces that shape the universe. In many ways, alchemy's transition from mystical practice to empirical science represents a larger shift in the human approach to knowledge and discovery. Alchemists of the past were not simply concerned with the manipulation of substances. They sought to understand the fundamental principles that governed both the material world and the spiritual dimensions of existence. This holistic approach to knowledge, which combined observation, experimentation, and spiritual insight, laid the foundations for the scientific method, while also leaving behind a rich legacy of symbolic thought that continues to influence contemporary philosophy and psychology. Alchemy's evolution from a mystical practice to a precursor of modern science is a testament to the complexity and depth of human intellectual inquiry. What began as a quest for transformation of both the material and the self has continued to shape the way we think about the world, our place in it, and the possibilities for transcendence and self-realization. While the philosopher's stone may no longer be the ultimate goal of scientific inquiry, the search for hidden truths and the desire to transform the world, both inside and out, remain at the heart of human exploration, whether through science, psychology, or the pursuit of wisdom. By the 18th century, Alchemy had begun to transform once more, transitioning away from the mystical and arcane practices of the Renaissance and medieval periods. The Age of Enlightenment, with its focus on reason, scientific inquiry, and the rejection of superstition, marked a period in which the allure of alchemy as a spiritual and material practice began to fade. Yet, even as the intellectual climate shifted, alchemy's legacy endured, not just as a precursor to modern chemistry, but as a source of symbolic and esoteric knowledge that continued to influence secret societies, occult movements, and intellectual circles. At the core of the transformation of alchemy during this period was a rising tension between empirical science and the mystical, symbolic nature of the alchemical tradition. As scientific advancements pushed the boundaries of knowledge, the rigorous methodologies of figures like Isaac Newton and Robert Boyle gradually overshadowed the more speculative and philosophical elements of alchemical practice. While many alchemists had viewed their work as both a material and spiritual journey, transforming base metals into gold and, in the process, elevating the soul, the Enlightenment thinkers began to focus almost exclusively on material transformation. The mystical aspects of alchemy seemed increasingly irrelevant in a world that was becoming more secular and governed by rational thought. However, the legacy of alchemy as a system of hidden knowledge was far from forgotten. Even as it was cast aside by the mainstream scientific community, alchemy remained an essential thread in the tapestry of occultism and secret knowledge. The 18th century witnessed the flourishing of various esoteric movements that saw themselves as custodians of the ancient wisdom once guarded by alchemists. Secret societies such as the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and later, the Illuminati, became repositories for this knowledge, preserving and interpreting the ancient symbols and ideas of alchemy. For these groups, alchemy was not merely a pursuit of transmuting metals or creating immortality, but a path to personal enlightenment, spiritual transformation, and a deeper understanding of the universe. The Rosicrucians, in particular, played a pivotal role in the preservation of alchemical teachings during the Enlightenment. The Rosicrucian manifestos, first published in the early 17th century, were a call for a new age of spiritual and scientific enlightenment. They presented alchemy not just as a pursuit of material wealth or divine secrets, but as a means of bringing about a global transformation, a rebirth of human consciousness. The Rosicrucians saw alchemy as a sacred art, one that could purify the soul as well as the body. Their influence was far-reaching, particularly during the 18th century, when their teachings were integrated into many of the philosophical and intellectual movements of the time. The rise of Freemasonry, too, was deeply intertwined with the alchemical tradition. Freemasons, like the Rosicrucians, were inspired by the idea of secret knowledge and the pursuit of hidden wisdom. Alchemy, with its rich symbolism and mystical connotations, was seen as a key component of this secret knowledge. The Freemasonic rituals and symbols often contained alchemical references, and the idea of spiritual transformation through the purification of the self was central to Masonic philosophy. Many of the founding members of the United States, including George Washington and Benjamin Franklin, were Freemasons, and their involvement in these secret societies indicates the extent to which alchemical symbolism continued to influence the intellectual and political landscape. While the intellectual climate of the Enlightenment increasingly distanced itself from alchemy as a material practice, the mystical and symbolic aspects of alchemy found new life in the Romantic movement that emerged in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The Romantics, inspired by a yearning for deeper meaning and a rejection of the mechanistic worldview of the Enlightenment, turned to alchemy as a source of inspiration. They embraced the idea of transformation, both personal and cultural, as a central theme in their work. Alchemical symbols, such as the philosopher's stone, the process of transmutation, and the search for hidden truths, became powerful metaphors for the Romantics, who sought to reconcile the material and spiritual realms. One of the key figures in the Romantic revival of alchemical thought was the German philosopher Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Goethe's fascination with alchemy is evident in his work, particularly in his famous play Faust. In Faust, the protagonist, Faust, embarks on a quest for ultimate knowledge and transcendence, seeking the philosopher's stone as a means of achieving immortality and divine wisdom. Faust's journey, fraught with moral and spiritual dilemmas, mirrors the alchemical quest for transformation, both material and spiritual. For Goethe, alchemy represented not just a search for gold, but a deeper, more existential quest for meaning, self-understanding, and enlightenment. The influence of alchemy also spread to other intellectual circles during the 19th century. The German philosopher and psychologist Carl Jung, one of the most influential figures in the history of modern psychology, saw alchemy as a powerful metaphor for the process of individuation, the journey towards self-actualization. Jung believed that alchemical symbols were expressions of the unconscious mind, and that the alchemical process of transformation mirrored the psychological process of integrating the various aspects of the self. He saw the alchemist as a symbol of the individual's quest to achieve balance, wholeness, and spiritual enlightenment. For Jung, the philosopher's stone represented the integration of the conscious and unconscious mind, and the completion of the alchemical work was synonymous with the realization of the self. Jung's interest in alchemy was part of a broader intellectual movement in the 19th century that sought to explore the relationship between the material and spiritual realms. In addition to psychology, this period also saw the rise of occultism, which integrated alchemical symbolism into its practices. Occultists like Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy, and Aleister Crowley, the infamous English occultist, drew on alchemical teachings to develop their own systems of thought. For these occultists, alchemy was not just an ancient science, but a spiritual practice that could unlock the hidden powers of the mind and the universe. Their work helped keep the flame of alchemical thought alive, even as mainstream science continued to reject it. The 20th century saw the continuing influence of alchemy, particularly within the realms of psychology, the occult, and the arts. As modern science advanced, the material pursuits of alchemy were largely abandoned in favor of empirical investigation. Yet the symbolic and mystical elements of alchemy continued to resonate in the collective unconscious. Alchemical imagery found its way into literature, art, and film, often serving as a metaphor for personal transformation and the search for deeper truths. In literature, authors like Hermann Hesse, who is best known for his novel Steppenwolf, were influenced by alchemical symbolism. Hesse's work explored the themes of self-discovery, transformation, and spiritual enlightenment, themes that were central to the alchemical tradition. In Steppenwolf, Hesse portrayed the protagonist's journey towards self-realization as a kind of inner alchemical process, where the individual must confront their shadow and integrate the various aspects of their personality to achieve a higher state of being. The alchemical symbols of transformation, such as the philosopher's stone and the process of purification, are woven into the fabric of the novel, reflecting the ongoing relevance of alchemical ideas in modern thought. Alchemical imagery also made its way into the world of surrealism and abstract art. Artists like Salvador Dali, who was deeply fascinated by the mysticism and symbolism of alchemy, used alchemical motifs in their work to explore the themes of transformation and the unconscious mind. Dali's famous painting The Metamorphosis of Narcissus is an example of how alchemical symbols were used to represent personal transformation and the journey of the self. For Dali, as for many artists and thinkers, alchemy was not just an ancient practice but a living, evolving tradition that offered insight into the nature of human existence. In the world of film, alchemical symbolism continues to appear in movies and stories that explore themes of personal transformation, the search for meaning, and the quest for knowledge. Films like The Matrix and Inception are modern retellings of the alchemical journey, where the protagonist undergoes a process of awakening, confronting their inner demons, and ultimately achieving a higher understanding of reality. These films, like the works of the Romantics, the Freemasons, and the occultists, use alchemical symbols as a metaphor for the spiritual and psychological transformation of the individual. In the present day, alchemy continues to fascinate those who seek a deeper understanding of the world and themselves. While alchemical practice no longer holds the same prominence in scientific circles, its symbolic power and its connection to the mysteries of the human experience persist. Alchemy's influence can be found not just in the arts, psychology, and occultism, but also in the popular imagination. The idea of transformation, of turning base material into gold, resonates with the modern quest for self-improvement, personal growth, and the pursuit of hidden knowledge. In a world that often feels disconnected from deeper truths, alchemy serves as a reminder that there is more to reality than what meets the eye, and that the process of transformation, whether spiritual, psychological, or material, remains a powerful and enduring force. As the 19th century unfolded, alchemy's mystical roots, once deeply entrenched in both the material and spiritual realms, began to find a second life in a world that was rapidly moving toward modernity. The rise of rationalism, the burgeoning dominance of scientific methods, and the steady march of industrialization began to push alchemy to the fringes of mainstream thought. Yet this very transformation gave birth to a powerful undercurrent of renewed interest. It was during this period that alchemy, though relegated to the periphery of scientific discourse, found a vital and unexpected resurgence in areas where materialism had little hold, namely, the world of psychology, occultism, and the arts. In these realms, the search for hidden knowledge, personal transformation, and the bridging of the material and spiritual worlds continued to resonate deeply, keeping the alchemical legacy alive and evolving. For many, the profound sense of mystery that alchemy had once embodied was too compelling to be easily discarded. In fact, it began to be absorbed into other intellectual and spiritual movements that emerged in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Central to this transformation was the intellectual and cultural upheaval that gave rise to the fields of psychology, mysticism, and the occult. The world was no longer content with mechanistic explanations for existence, and individuals were increasingly looking inward, seeking ways to explore the deeper layers of the psyche and the unknown territories of the soul. Alchemy, with its centuries-old promise of transformation, became the metaphorical bridge between the known and the unknown, the material and the spiritual. One of the most significant figures to revisit and reinterpret the symbolism and metaphors of alchemy was Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist whose work would eventually lay the foundation for modern depth psychology. Jung was deeply fascinated by the imagery and processes of alchemy, seeing in them a rich, symbolic language for the unconscious mind. For Jung, alchemy was more than just an ancient precursor to modern chemistry. It was a key to understanding the processes of inner psychological transformation. The alchemical process, with its stages of dissolution, purification, and the creation of the philosopher's stone, became for Jung a powerful metaphor for the journey toward individuation, the process by which a person becomes the fullest version of themselves. Jung believed that the alchemist's work of transmuting base metals into gold paralleled the psychological work of integrating the unconscious aspects of the psyche into conscious awareness. Just as the alchemist sought to refine and purify raw materials into a more perfected substance, so too did the individual need to confront their shadow, the parts of the self that were repressed or ignored, and integrate them into a more balanced and harmonious whole. For Jung, alchemy represented a process of transformation not just in the external world, but within the inner world of the individual. He argued that the alchemist's journey was symbolic of the human struggle to reconcile opposing forces within the psyche, conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, into a unified self. In Jung's view, the philosopher's stone was not a literal object, but a symbol of the culmination of this psychological process. It represented the realization of the self, the integration of all aspects of the individual's personality, including the shadow, the anima or animus, and the unconscious. This process of alchemical transformation was deeply tied to the individuation process, in which the person's ego is broken down and rebuilt in order to achieve a more complete and balanced sense of self. Jung saw alchemy as a path towards self-actualization, a way to explore and embrace the hidden depths of the psyche. In this sense, alchemy was not a relic of the past, but a living, evolving metaphor for psychological and spiritual growth. Jung's exploration of alchemy was not only a psychological interpretation but also a deeply spiritual one. For him, the alchemical process mirrored the journey of spiritual awakening, a process of confronting one's inner darkness, undergoing a profound transformation, and ultimately achieving a sense of wholeness or enlightenment. Jung's work on alchemy would inspire many of his followers to explore these themes further, deepening the connection between alchemical imagery and the development of the modern psychological and spiritual understanding of the self. Jung himself wrote extensively on alchemical texts, and his psychological studies would influence a wide range of thinkers and practitioners who saw in alchemy a roadmap to inner liberation. In parallel to Jung's psychological reinterpretation of alchemy, the late 19th and early 20th centuries also saw the rise of occult movements that would draw heavily on alchemical ideas and imagery. Figures like Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy, and Aleister Crowley, the infamous occultist, both incorporated alchemical symbolism into their teachings, seeing in it a powerful system for understanding the hidden forces of the universe. For these individuals, alchemy was not merely a symbolic system, but a real and practical discipline that could lead to spiritual enlightenment and mastery over the forces of nature. Blavatsky, with her emphasis on esoteric wisdom and hidden knowledge, saw alchemy as a means of unlocking the deeper truths of the universe. She was particularly interested in the mystical and metaphysical aspects of alchemy, and she interpreted the alchemical symbols as a way to communicate with the divine and understand the hidden laws of nature. For Blavatsky, the alchemist's goal was not simply the transformation of matter, but the transformation of the soul. She viewed the philosopher's stone not as a literal substance, but as a symbol of spiritual perfection, an attainment that could be reached through inner purification and mystical practices. Crowley, on the other hand, took a more radical approach to alchemy. A controversial and flamboyant figure, Crowley believed that alchemy could be used as a tool for personal power and liberation. He saw the alchemical process of transmutation as a way to break free from societal constraints and achieve a state of ultimate freedom and self-realization. Crowley's interpretation of alchemy was deeply influenced by his own occult practices, which included elements of ceremonial magic, mysticism, and tantric philosophy. He saw the philosopher's stone as a symbol of the attainment of divine knowledge and spiritual power, a goal that he believed could be achieved through intense personal discipline and ritual. At the same time, the late 19th century saw a renewed interest in the occult, with secret societies like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and the Freemasons continuing to preserve and expand upon alchemical teachings. The Golden Dawn, in particular, played a crucial role in bringing alchemical ideas back into public consciousness, combining them with other mystical traditions such as Kabbalah, astrology, and the study of the tarot. For the members of the Golden Dawn, alchemy was a key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe and the secrets of human existence. They saw the alchemical process as a path to spiritual enlightenment, and many of the order's rituals were designed to initiate members into the deeper aspects of alchemical symbolism. While alchemy was undergoing this resurgence in the spiritual and occult realms, it was also being incorporated into the arts and literature. The early 20th century saw the rise of the symbolist and surrealist movements, which embraced alchemical imagery as a means of expressing the hidden, unconscious aspects of human existence. Artists like Salvador Dali, who was fascinated by the mystical and symbolic aspects of alchemy, used alchemical motifs to explore themes of transformation, disintegration, and rebirth. Dali's surrealist paintings often featured symbols of alchemical processes, such as the melting clocks in the persistence of memory, which can be seen as representations of the fluid, transformative nature of time and consciousness. The literary world, too, saw a resurgence of alchemical themes in the works of authors such as Hermann Hesse. In Steppenwolf, Hesse used alchemical symbols to represent the protagonist's journey of self-discovery and spiritual transformation. The process of transmutation, with its stages of dissolution and purification, became a metaphor for the psychological and emotional struggles that the character undergoes as he seeks to integrate the different parts of his personality and attain a higher state of consciousness. Hesse's work, like that of Jung, highlighted the psychological dimensions of alchemy, using its symbols to explore the themes of inner transformation and the search for meaning in an increasingly fragmented world. The resurgence of interest in alchemy during the 19th and 20th centuries reflects a broader cultural and intellectual movement that sought to reconcile the material and spiritual realms. In a world that was becoming increasingly dominated by industrialization, materialism, and scientific rationalism, there was a growing desire to reconnect with the deeper, more mysterious aspects of existence. Alchemy, with its promise of transformation and its rich symbolic language, provided a way for individuals to explore the hidden depths of the self and the universe. While the material pursuits of alchemy, turning base metals into gold, were largely abandoned, its symbolic and spiritual dimensions continued to captivate the imagination of those who sought to transcend the limitations of the physical world. This revival of alchemical thought during the 19th and 20th centuries was not merely a nostalgic return to ancient practices, but a reimagining of alchemy as a tool for personal and spiritual liberation. Whether through psychology, occultism, or the arts, alchemy's legacy endured, offering a timeless map for those who sought transformation, self-realization, and a deeper understanding of the mysteries of existence. Even today, alchemical symbols continue to inspire artists, philosophers, and seekers of hidden knowledge, ensuring that the transformative power of alchemy remains as relevant as ever. By the dawn of the 20th century, the shifting intellectual and cultural landscapes began to change the way people viewed both the material world and the mystical traditions that had long defined human experience. Alchemy, which had once been primarily concerned with turning base metals into gold and discovering the elusive philosopher's stone, was now being reinterpreted as something far deeper, a symbol of inner transformation, psychological growth, and the transcendence of the ego. As scientific rationalism dominated the intellectual scene, many sought ways to bridge the gap between the cold, mechanical nature of the material world and the profound, often ineffable mysteries of human existence. Alchemy, with its rich symbolism and promises of spiritual and psychological rebirth, continued to serve as a metaphor for this journey of self-discovery. One of the key figures who helped bring alchemy into the realm of modern psychology was Carl Jung, whose deep fascination with the alchemical process led him to develop a new framework for understanding the human psyche. Jung saw alchemy not merely as an ancient precursor to chemistry, but as a profound psychological metaphor for the process of individuation, the journey through which a person integrates the unconscious aspects of the self and achieves wholeness. For Jung, the alchemist's quest to transmute base metals into gold was analogous to the psychological process of confronting and integrating the shadow, the repressed and unconscious aspects of the personality that, if left unresolved, could lead to inner fragmentation and disbalance. Jung's interest in alchemy was not just an intellectual pursuit. He saw it as a way of understanding the spiritual and psychological struggles that each person faces on the path to self-realization. He believed that the alchemical process, with its stages of dissolution, purification, and regeneration, mirrored the inner work required to transform the psyche. Just as the alchemist sought to purify substances through fire and water, so too did the individual need to confront their inner darkness, refine their consciousness, and bring all aspects of themselves into harmony. For Jung, the philosopher's stone, often depicted as the culmination of the alchemical journey, was a symbol of the integrated self, the whole person who has achieved balance and unity between the conscious and unconscious mind. Jung's ideas were groundbreaking not only for psychology but for the broader cultural revival of alchemy in the 20th century. His work on alchemy and individuation resonated with many intellectuals, artists, and seekers who were drawn to the deeper, more symbolic aspects of life. Jung's interpretation of alchemical symbolism became a cornerstone for many who saw in alchemy a roadmap for personal growth, spiritual enlightenment, and psychological healing. He connected alchemical texts to the collective unconscious, that shared repository of human experience and archetypes that transcends time and culture. Through this lens, alchemy was not merely a collection of mystical rites but a universal language of transformation, a symbolic system that could be used to unlock the mysteries of the psyche and the soul. While Jung's work was an important contribution to the intellectual revival of alchemy, other movements of the 20th century also played a significant role in bringing alchemical ideas back into the mainstream. The early 1900s saw the rise of various occult and mystical movements that reinterpreted the ancient tradition for a modern audience. Among the most notable of these were the Theosophical Society, founded by Helena Blavatsky, and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, both of which integrated alchemical symbolism into their teachings. Blavatsky, in particular, was instrumental in shaping the modern understanding of esoteric knowledge, viewing alchemy as part of a broader system of hidden wisdom that could lead to spiritual enlightenment and mastery over the forces of nature. Her teachings emphasized the interconnectedness of all things and the potential for individuals to transcend the material world through mystical practices, much as the alchemists sought to transcend the ordinary through the transformation of matter. The Theosophical Society, founded in the late 19th century, was rooted in the idea that hidden knowledge, accessible only to a select few, could bring about profound spiritual transformation. For Theosophists, alchemy was not just a practical science but a spiritual practice that could help individuals achieve a higher state of consciousness. The philosopher's stone, in their view, was not a literal object but a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment and the attainment of a higher, more universal understanding of reality. Blavatsky and her followers believed that alchemy could lead to a deeper understanding of the divine, a vision of the universe that transcended the limitations of ordinary perception. Alongside theosophy, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was another critical institution that sought to preserve and expand upon the mystical teachings of alchemy. Founded in the late 19th century, the Golden Dawn attracted prominent occultists such as Aleister Crowley and W.B. Yeats, who were deeply interested in the alchemical tradition. The Golden Dawn's rituals and teachings were steeped in alchemical symbolism, and its members practiced a form of ceremonial magic that drew heavily on the principles of alchemy. For them, alchemy was not simply an intellectual or philosophical pursuit, but a practical tool for achieving spiritual transformation and enlightenment. This occult revival was not confined to any one group or philosophy. It was part of a broader cultural shift in the 20th century toward mystical and esoteric traditions. The growing interest in alchemy, magic, and the occult reflected a desire for deeper meaning and understanding in a world that was increasingly dominated by materialism and technological advancement. As industrialization and rationalism reshaped society, many felt a profound sense of spiritual emptiness and sought ways to reconnect with the mysteries of existence. Alchemy, with its promise of transformation, offered a compelling answer to this existential longing. Whether through psychology, occultism, or mysticism, the alchemical process became a symbol for personal and spiritual growth, a means of transcending the mundane and reaching for the divine. As the 20th century progressed, alchemical imagery and themes began to find their way into literature, art, and popular culture. Artists such as Salvador Dali, who was deeply influenced by the symbolism of the unconscious mind, frequently employed alchemical motifs in his work. Dali's surrealist paintings, such as the Metamorphosis of Narcissus, reflected the inner transformation and psychological disintegration that were central to the alchemical process. For Dali, the alchemical symbols represented the fluidity of reality, the collapse of time and space, and the potential for personal and artistic reinvention. In many ways, Dali's work mirrored the alchemical pursuit of transcendence and the search for deeper meaning beyond the surface of the material world. Similarly, in literature, authors such as Hermann Hesse drew on alchemical imagery to explore themes of personal transformation. In his novel Steppenwolf, Hesse used alchemical symbols to represent the protagonist's struggle with his own divided self and his quest for self-actualization. The alchemical process in Steppenwolf became a metaphor for the protagonist's psychological and spiritual journey, as he sought to reconcile the conflicting aspects of his personality and achieve a higher state of being. Hesse's use of alchemy as a narrative framework reflected the broader intellectual and cultural interest in the tradition as a means of exploring the deeper dimensions of human experience. Alchemical ideas also began to find their way into film, particularly in stories that dealt with themes of personal transformation, spiritual awakening, and the quest for hidden knowledge. Films such as The Matrix and Inception employed alchemical symbolism to explore the boundaries between reality and illusion, the material and the spiritual. In The Matrix, the protagonist, Neo, embarks on a journey that mirrors the alchemical process of awakening to a deeper truth, breaking free from the illusion of the physical world and discovering his true self. Similarly, Inception explores the idea of manipulating the mind and consciousness, a theme that resonates with the alchemical pursuit of mastery over the self and the transformation of inner reality. In these various cultural expressions, whether through psychology, occultism, art, or film, alchemy continues to serve as a symbol of the human desire for transformation, transcendence, and self-discovery. The Philosopher's Stone, once seen as a literal object of alchemical practice, now serves as a metaphor for the deeper, more elusive truths of human existence. Alchemy, in its modern form, is less concerned with material gain than with the quest for personal and spiritual transformation. It speaks to the human need to understand the mysteries of the universe and to transcend the limitations of the ego, offering a path to a deeper, more integrated sense of self. As the 20th century came to a close, alchemy had evolved from a forgotten medieval pursuit into a rich and vibrant symbol of the human journey towards self-realization and spiritual enlightenment. Whether through the psychological work of Carl Jung, the mystical practices of the occult, or the artistic expression of the surrealists, alchemy remained a living tradition, one that continued to inspire individuals to seek transformation, not just in the outer world, but in the depths of the self. In the 21st century, as we continue to grapple with the challenges of modern life, the timeless symbols and lessons of alchemy still resonate, offering a map for those who seek to understand themselves and the universe on a deeper, more profound level. The legacy of alchemy is not merely one of ancient texts and forgotten rituals, but one that continues to inspire and guide the human spirit on its quest for truth, transformation, and transcendence. As the 20th century drew to a close, alchemy, with its rich history of transformation, found itself not only embedded in the worlds of psychology and the occult but also beginning to influence new fields of thought and culture. What had once been a mystic pursuit concerned with turning base metals into gold and achieving immortality gradually transitioned into a symbolic language of interchange, spiritual awakening, and the deep mysteries of existence. Alchemy, long relegated to the realm of forgotten practices and arcane knowledge, became increasingly integrated into modern philosophy, popular culture, and even scientific discourse. Yet, despite its dramatic shifts and adaptations, alchemy remained relevant, offering profound insights into human consciousness and the potential for inner and outer transformation. At the heart of this resurgence was a renewed emphasis on the symbolic and metaphorical aspects of alchemy. As the world entered the digital age and the fields of science, technology, and materialism continued to grow, there was a palpable hunger for deeper, more existential answers that could not be provided by materialism alone. In a world obsessed with tangible, measurable results, alchemy provided a counterpoint, a language of the intangible, the mystical, and the unknowable. Its enduring appeal, especially in the form of psychological, spiritual, and artistic exploration, lay in its ability to bridge the gap between the material and the immaterial, offering a metaphorical path to higher knowledge, greater self-awareness, and spiritual evolution. It was no longer just the hidden world of alchemists that was of interest. It was the psychological and philosophical essence of their practices, the deep and often painful process of transformation they symbolized, that captivated modern thinkers and seekers. Figures like Carl Jung, already well known for his exploration of the unconscious mind, had unlocked the psychological significance of alchemy, seeing it as more than just the pursuit of gold. Jung's ideas on alchemy, notably his interpretation of the transformation of lead into gold as a metaphor for the individuation process, became the foundation for much of modern alchemical thought. For Jung, the alchemical symbols, which once served as codes for material transformation, had transcended their physical roots. They were now markers of personal and spiritual change, maps to the soul's journey toward wholeness. Jung's interpretation resonated with many individuals seeking deeper meaning in their own lives. Alchemical symbolism, which had once been enshrouded in mystery, became a tool for modern self-exploration. Jung connected the process of alchemical transformation to psychological healing, showing how each step of the alchemical process, from calcination, the burning away of impurities, to conjunction, the merging of opposites, mirrored the necessary stages of self-discovery and psychological growth. Just as the alchemists sought to transmute common metals into the rarest of substances, so too did the individual need to undergo an inner process of refinement and integration. Alchemy, in Jung's view, was not a static body of knowledge, but a dynamic, living process, one that involved constant renewal and reawakening. This psychological approach to alchemy found fertile ground in the evolving field of personal development and self-help. In the mid-20th century, when existential questions about meaning, identity, and self-actualization were at the forefront of philosophical inquiry, alchemy was frequently invoked as a model of personal transformation. Writers and thinkers like Joseph Campbell, with his concept of the hero's journey, drew heavily from alchemical symbolism. Campbell's work on myth and the universal patterns that structure human experience echoed the stages of alchemical initiation, from the call to adventure to the confrontation with the self and, ultimately, the transformation of the hero into something greater. Alchemy, thus, was no longer seen merely as an ancient practice, but as a perennial philosophy that spoke to the modern human condition, a way of mapping the internal landscape of growth and change. The fascination with alchemy in the 20th century also found expression in the arts. As the world faced the horrors of war, the alienation of industrialized life, and the anxieties of modern existence, artists turned to alchemical themes as metaphors for existential crisis and transformation. The Surrealist movement, with its emphasis on the unconscious, dreams, and the irrational, was one of the first to revive alchemical symbolism. Artists like Salvador Dali and Max Ernst, deeply influenced by Jung's psychological theories, incorporated alchemical imagery into their work to explore the unconscious and the mysteries of the psyche. Dali's famous paintings, such as the Metamorphosis of Narcissus, evoked the alchemical transformation of consciousness, as the protagonist undergoes a deep shift, symbolized by the shifting, melting forms in his artwork. For Dali, alchemy was a bridge between the conscious and unconscious, a means of accessing the deeper, symbolic truths hidden within the self. The alchemical process, with its emphasis on purification, transformation, and enlightenment, continued to capture the imagination of a postmodern world. In the world of literature, alchemy's influence persisted through works that explored themes of self-realization, spiritual awakening, and the search for deeper meaning. Authors like Hermann Hesse, whose work explored the depths of the human psyche and the quest for wholeness, used alchemical motifs to frame their narratives. In Steppenwolf, Hesse used the process of alchemical transmutation as a metaphor for the protagonist's journey of self-actualization. Just as an alchemist works through difficult processes to transform base metals into gold, so too does the character in Steppenwolf work through the contradictions and struggles within himself to become a more integrated and whole individual. Hesse's use of alchemical symbols underlined the idea that transformation, whether personal or collective, was a painful but necessary journey towards spiritual enlightenment. In the second half of the 20th century, alchemical symbolism permeated the world of film, particularly in works that explored themes of transcendence, awakening, and the mysteries of existence. Filmmakers began to use alchemy as a way of exploring psychological and spiritual transformation on the big screen. The 1999 film The Matrix, which explored the nature of reality and illusion, borrowed heavily from alchemical themes. The protagonist, Neo, begins as a confused and disillusioned man, much like the alchemist who starts with base materials. Through his journey of awakening, he undergoes a profound transformation that mirrors the alchemical process of purification and enlightenment. The final scene, in which Neo fully embraces his role as the One, represents the alchemical attainment of the Philosopher's Stone, the realization of one's true self and the mastery of the hidden forces that shape reality. Similarly, Christopher Nolan's Inception, 2010, explored the concept of inner worlds and the manipulation of consciousness in ways that echoed the alchemical pursuit of knowledge and self-mastery. The film's portrayal of the subconscious as a labyrinthine space that could be manipulated and transformed served as a modern retelling of the alchemical quest for inner enlightenment. Just as alchemists sought to uncover hidden truths by transforming matter, Inception suggested that the transformation of the mind could reveal deeper, more profound insights into the nature of reality itself. While alchemical symbolism continued to inform the arts and film, it also found its place in the broader culture, where the interest in personal transformation, self-help, and spirituality had exploded in the late 20th century. Alchemy, which had once been the pursuit of a few esoteric scholars, had become part of the mainstream dialogue about self-improvement and personal growth. The rise of the New Age movement, which emphasized holistic healing, meditation, and spiritual awakening, drew heavily from alchemical teachings. The idea of transmutation, whether in terms of transforming negative emotions into positive ones or seeking to change the course of one's destiny, resonated deeply with those seeking to transcend the limitations of their daily lives. Books, seminars, and retreats dedicated to alchemical transformation flourished, emphasizing the notion that individuals could create their own Philosopher's Stone, a key to unlocking the deepest mysteries of the self. Authors such as Paulo Coelho, with his novel The Alchemist, took the symbolism of alchemy and translated it into a narrative that resonated with modern readers. The protagonist's journey to find the hidden treasure, symbolized by the Philosopher's Stone, mirrors the personal and spiritual search for purpose, meaning, and self-realization. Coelho's novel was embraced by millions, becoming a modern classic that brought the themes of alchemy into the hearts and minds of people around the world. Even in the contemporary world, the alchemical tradition continues to resonate with those seeking deeper meaning and self-understanding. In the world of psychotherapy, coaching, and personal growth, alchemical metaphors are often used to describe the process of self-discovery and personal transformation. Just as the alchemist uses fire and water to purify and refine substances, individuals on a personal journey may need to confront their inner darkness, work through their challenges, and emerge transformed. The metaphor of the philosopher's stone, as the culmination of this process, remains a powerful symbol of spiritual awakening and self-realization. The 21st century has seen a remarkable fusion of ancient wisdom and modern understanding. As the world grapples with environmental crises, political uncertainty, and technological advances, there is an increasing desire for deeper, more holistic ways of understanding the world and the self. Alchemy's metaphorical power endures because it speaks to a universal human longing: the search for transformation, growth, and self-mastery. Whether through the arts, psychology, spirituality, or personal development, the legacy of alchemy continues to provide a rich and multifaceted framework for understanding and embracing the mysteries of human existence. As we navigate the complexities of modern life, alchemy remains a source of inspiration, a guide for those seeking to unlock the hidden potential within themselves and the world around them. As the 21st century progressed, the alchemical tradition, despite its ancient origins, began to evolve in ways that made it increasingly relevant to the modern world. In the midst of a rapidly changing landscape with advances in technology, scientific breakthroughs, and an increasingly interconnected global society, the deeper, more metaphysical aspects of alchemy continued to resonate with people in search of meaning beyond the material. The world was increasingly dominated by the fast pace of technological innovation and the constant demands of the modern age. Yet there was an undeniable longing for something more, something transcendent, something that could offer a sense of inner peace, transformation, and personal growth. Alchemy, with its timeless symbols and allegories of transformation, continued to offer just that: a way to navigate the challenges of the modern world by delving into the depths of the human psyche and soul. The metaphors and symbols of alchemy, which once seemed esoteric and irrelevant in a world defined by mechanistic thought, had become, by the early years of the 21st century, a bridge between the material and the spiritual. As people turned more inward in their quest for fulfillment, seeking answers to existential questions about the meaning of life, personal purpose, and the nature of the universe, the symbolic language of alchemy was increasingly embraced by those involved in the realms of personal development, psychology, and spirituality. It became clear that the transformation that alchemists had sought in their laboratories, turning lead into gold, was not merely about material wealth, but the transformation of the self, the integration of opposites, and the cultivation of inner wisdom. One of the key factors contributing to the ongoing relevance of alchemy in the 21st century was its ability to provide a symbolic language that allowed individuals to articulate and understand their psychological, emotional, and spiritual experiences. In a world where scientific and materialistic explanations often failed to address the complexities of the human soul, alchemy's focus on personal transmutation and the quest for inner purity provided a much-needed metaphorical framework for self-discovery. The process of transmutation, which involved the breaking down of the old to make way for the new, resonated deeply with people who were facing personal crises, seeking to reinvent themselves, or struggling with the burden of societal expectations. It offered a path to inner alchemy, where one could face the darkness within and emerge stronger, wiser, and more integrated. Alchemy's symbolic power also continued to find expression in various modern philosophical and spiritual movements. From Jungian psychology to New Age thought, alchemical metaphors were frequently invoked to describe the inner work required to achieve self-realization and enlightenment. Carl Jung's interpretation of alchemical symbolism, which emphasized the process of individuation, of integrating the unconscious aspects of the self, continued to inspire many who sought deeper understanding of their inner lives. For Jung, the stages of the alchemical process mirrored the stages of psychological growth: the destruction of the ego, the confrontation with the shadow, and the eventual emergence of the integrated self. This concept of individuation, closely tied to alchemical ideas, remains central to modern psychotherapy, offering a framework for people to understand their emotional struggles and work toward healing. Jung's ideas provided a blueprint for personal transformation, using alchemical images like the philosopher's stone, the albedo, the stage of purification, and the conjunction, the marriage of opposites, to illustrate the psychological journey. The alchemist's laboratory became a metaphor for the mind and soul, with each phase of the alchemical work representing a psychological or spiritual process. The work of purification, in which the alchemist burned away impurities to reveal the essence of gold, was seen as analogous to the inner work individuals must do to confront their fears, insecurities, and repressed desires in order to reach a higher state of consciousness. Alchemy, then, was not simply an arcane pursuit from an ancient past, but a living, breathing tradition that continued to speak to the human condition in the present day. Alongside its resurgence in psychological and spiritual circles, alchemy also found a place in the broader world of self-help and personal development. As the world of business, leadership, and entrepreneurship became increasingly focused on innovation and transformation, the metaphor of alchemy gained popularity as a powerful tool for personal growth and self-mastery. Alchemical ideas were frequently used by motivational speakers and authors to illustrate the process of change, how individuals could transform their lives, much like the alchemist transforming base metals into gold. The language of alchemy, with its focus on transformation and the idea that something greater could emerge from a seemingly unremarkable beginning, resonated with people seeking to overcome challenges and achieve success in all areas of their lives. In the realm of modern spirituality, alchemy found a strong foothold in the New Age movement, which embraced esoteric and mystical traditions from various cultures. New Age teachings, which emphasized holistic healing, personal empowerment, and spiritual awakening, often invoked the language of alchemy to explain the process of self-realization and enlightenment. The idea of spiritual transmutation was a key element of New Age philosophy, with practitioners believing that by engaging in practices like meditation, energy healing, and affirmations, they could undergo an alchemical transformation that would purify their bodies and minds, leading to greater peace and awareness. For many, the ultimate goal of this spiritual transmutation was the attainment of the philosopher's stone, not as a literal object, but as a metaphor for achieving the highest state of spiritual enlightenment, where the individual's consciousness is fully integrated and harmonized with the divine. Alchemy also played a significant role in the contemporary world of alternative medicine, where it was incorporated into practices aimed at healing both the body and the spirit. Many holistic health practitioners drew upon the language of alchemy to describe the process of healing, using the alchemical symbols of purification, transformation, and regeneration to explain how individuals could achieve balance and vitality in their lives. The process of healing, in this context, was seen as a form of alchemical work. Just as the alchemist sought to transform raw materials into pure gold, so too could individuals transform their physical and emotional health through the process of inner and outer purification. This approach to healing was especially appealing in an age when many felt disconnected from traditional medicine, seeking alternatives that offered a more integrative and holistic view of the body and mind. The resurgence of alchemical themes in popular culture was another key factor that helped keep alchemy alive and relevant in the modern world. Films, television shows, and books that explored themes of transformation, self-discovery, and the search for hidden knowledge frequently drew upon alchemical imagery and symbols. Popular franchises like Harry Potter, The Matrix, and The Lord of the Rings all included references to alchemical themes, whether through the idea of hidden truths, the transformation of the self, or the quest for ultimate power. Alchemy's enduring presence in these cultural narratives reflects the continuing appeal of its symbols and ideas, offering a timeless framework for exploring the human experience of change and transformation. In Harry Potter, for example, the character of Nicholas Flamel and his pursuit of the Philosopher's Stone mirrors the traditional alchemical quest for immortality and enlightenment. The stone itself, which grants eternal life, is portrayed as the culmination of an alchemical process, a symbol of the ultimate transformation of the self. The symbolism of the Philosopher's Stone as a metaphor for spiritual enlightenment is central to the themes of the series, where characters like Harry and his friends undergo their own transformations, confronting their shadows and growing into more complete versions of themselves. The magical world of Harry Potter is, in many ways, a reflection of the alchemical quest for transformation, as the characters navigate the challenges of growing up, facing their fears, and ultimately achieving a higher state of understanding. Similarly, The Matrix is a film that uses alchemical imagery to explore themes of awakening, enlightenment, and the transformation of consciousness. Neo, the protagonist, begins the story as an ordinary man trapped in the illusion of the Matrix, unaware of his true potential. As he undergoes a series of trials and confronts the shadowy forces that control his world, Neo undergoes a profound inner transformation, ultimately achieving a state of enlightenment that mirrors the alchemical process of transmutation. The film's emphasis on breaking free from the illusions of the material world and awakening to a deeper reality is in many ways an alchemical journey, where the protagonist is purified, refined, and ultimately reborn. The resurgence of alchemy in popular culture also extended to literature, where authors like Paulo Coelho brought the symbolic power of alchemy to a global audience. In The Alchemist, Coelho used the story of Santiago, a young shepherd on a quest to find the Philosopher's Stone, as a metaphor for the universal journey of self-discovery and spiritual awakening. Santiago's journey, filled with trials and moments of deep introspection, echoes the alchemical process of transformation. His search for treasure becomes a search for his own personal truth, and in the end, he discovers that the treasure he sought was within him all along. Coelho's novel, embraced by millions around the world, highlighted the enduring appeal of alchemical symbols as a means of understanding the human experience. In the 21st century, alchemy remains as much a part of our cultural and spiritual landscape as it ever was, offering a timeless map for personal transformation, self-realization, and the search for deeper meaning. Whether through psychology, literature, film, spiritual practices, or personal development, the symbols of alchemy continue to inspire and guide individuals on their journey toward enlightenment. Alchemy is not merely an ancient pursuit. It is a living tradition that speaks to the ongoing human quest for knowledge, understanding, and the transformation of the self. As the world changes and evolves, the enduring wisdom of alchemy will continue to provide a symbolic language for those seeking to navigate the mysteries of existence and unlock their highest potential. As the 21st century continued to unfold, alchemy's symbolic resonance continued to deepen in a world increasingly dominated by science, technology, and the rapid pace of modern life. While many of the ancient practices and beliefs that once defined human existence were gradually forgotten or overshadowed by the triumph of materialism, alchemy found a new relevance in addressing the deep, often unspoken needs of the human psyche. Despite the extraordinary advances in technology and our understanding of the natural world, there remained an enduring hunger for answers to the more profound questions of life, the mysteries of human consciousness, the nature of reality, the purpose of existence, and the meaning of inner transformation. Alchemy, with its timeless symbols of transmutation, purification, and illumination, offered a unique bridge between the physical and the metaphysical, providing a framework for understanding not only the material world, but the spiritual and psychological dimensions of human life. The resurgence of interest in alchemy at the turn of the century was also influenced by the growing disillusionment with materialism. As technological advancements continued to redefine the boundaries of human possibility, many individuals began to feel a sense of alienation, as if they had lost touch with the deeper, more essential aspects of existence. Despite the proliferation of knowledge and the increased accessibility of information, people were still grappling with questions that could not be answered by empirical science alone. Questions about the nature of consciousness, the mystery of life and death, and the inner purpose of human existence. Alchemy, with its emphasis on transformation and the quest for spiritual enlightenment, offered a language for addressing these questions in a way that was both profound and deeply personal. In the early years of the 21st century, the symbolic power of alchemy was increasingly explored in the realm of psychology and psychotherapy. Many modern therapists and counselors began to integrate alchemical imagery into their practices, recognizing its potential as a metaphorical tool for self-exploration and healing. Carl Jung's groundbreaking work on the psychological significance of alchemy had already established a framework for understanding the alchemical process as a metaphor for psychological growth and self-realization. Jung believed that alchemical symbols could be used to represent the stages of individuation, the process by which an individual integrates the unconscious and conscious aspects of their personality to achieve a state of wholeness. For Jung, The alchemical process of turning base metals into gold was not a literal pursuit of wealth but a symbolic representation of the psychological work involved in transforming the shadow, the repressed, unconscious aspects of the self, into conscious awareness. Jung's ideas resonated with a generation of people searching for ways to integrate the fragmented parts of themselves and find meaning in a rapidly changing world. Alchemical symbolism, such as the stages of calcination, dissolution, and conjunction, became powerful metaphors for the inner work required to break free from limiting beliefs, traumas, and emotional wounds. The journey of the alchemist, who faced trials and purification in their quest to transmute lead into gold, became a metaphor for the personal journey of self-discovery and healing. Just as the alchemist sought to refine the elements of nature to create something pure, individuals on the path of personal growth sought to refine their own consciousness, confronting their inner darkness and emerging with a deeper understanding of themselves. One of the most significant aspects of alchemical symbolism is its emphasis on the integration of opposites. The alchemist's work often involved the merging of seemingly incompatible elements, fire and water, spirit and matter, masculine and feminine, into a unified whole. This theme of unity and integration became particularly important in the realm of modern psychology, where the goal of therapy was not simply to eliminate undesirable traits or behaviors, but to integrate and harmonize all aspects of the self. The alchemical process of the conjunction, the union of opposites, mirrored the psychological work of reconciling conflicting aspects of one's personality, allowing the individual to become a more whole and integrated being. In this sense, alchemy was not just an external pursuit but an inner journey that mirrored the work of personal and spiritual development. Alchemy's ability to serve as a symbolic framework for self-transformation also found expression in the world of spirituality and religious practices. As the world became increasingly secular, many individuals turned to alternative forms of spirituality in search of deeper meaning and connection to the divine. New Age movements, which emphasized the importance of personal growth, energy healing, and spiritual awakening, often drew upon alchemical imagery to convey their teachings. Alchemy's focus on transformation, turning lead into gold, achieving enlightenment, and purifying the self, resonated deeply with those seeking to transcend the limitations of their physical existence and awaken to higher states of consciousness. For many, the concept of the philosopher's stone became a symbol of the ultimate spiritual goal: enlightenment, self-realization, and union with the divine. In this context, alchemy was no longer viewed as an ancient practice of turning base metals into precious substances, but as a path of spiritual awakening, a means of transcending the limitations of the ego and achieving a higher state of awareness. The process of transmutation became a metaphor for the spiritual journey of purification, where the individual worked to dissolve the barriers that separated them from their true essence and the divine. The philosopher's stone, in this view, represented not just the transformation of material substances but the realization of the highest potential of the soul. Alchemy also found its place in the world of art, where its symbols were used to explore themes of transformation, duality, and the search for deeper meaning. The Surrealist movement, which emerged in the early 20th century, was particularly drawn to alchemical imagery as a way to express the unconscious mind, dreams, and the irrational. Surrealist artists like Salvador Dali and Max Ernst incorporated alchemical symbols into their work to explore the complexities of the human psyche and the transformative power of art. Dali's famous painting The Metamorphosis of Narcissus, for example, portrays the transformation of the self, symbolized by the melting figure of Narcissus, as a representation of the alchemical process of spiritual awakening and inner change. The Surrealists, influenced by Jung's ideas, saw alchemy as a way to access the deeper layers of the unconscious and explore the hidden forces that shape human experience. In literature, alchemy's influence continued to be felt in works that explored the themes of self-discovery, transformation, and the search for meaning. Authors like Hermann Hesse, who drew heavily on alchemical symbolism in his novel Steppenwolf, used alchemy as a metaphor for the protagonist's journey toward wholeness and spiritual awakening. The process of inner alchemy in Steppenwolf mirrored the alchemical stages of dissolution, purification, and integration, as the protagonist struggled to reconcile the opposing aspects of his personality and achieve a higher state of being. In many ways, the alchemical journey became a universal metaphor for the human condition. A journey that involves confronting the darkness within, transcending the ego, and emerging as a more complete and integrated person. The symbolic power of alchemy also found expression in the world of modern popular culture, particularly in films and television shows that explored themes of personal transformation, the search for hidden knowledge, and the questioning of reality. The film The Matrix, released in 1999, is a prime example of how alchemical symbolism was used to explore the nature of consciousness and the potential for spiritual awakening. In The Matrix, the protagonist Neo embarks on a journey of self-discovery that mirrors the alchemical process of transmutation. Like the alchemist who seeks to transform base metals into gold, Neo must confront his own limitations and illusions, breaking free from the false reality of the Matrix to awaken to a higher state of consciousness. Neo's transformation from a disillusioned hacker to the enlightened one echoes the alchemical process of purification and the realization of one's true potential. Similarly, films like Inception, 2010, and Doctor Strange, 2016, explored the manipulation of reality and the journey of self-discovery through the lens of alchemical symbolism. In Inception, the characters enter the subconscious mind, where they confront the hidden desires, fears, and memories that shape their lives. The process of navigating the dream world becomes a metaphor for the psychological work of transformation, where the characters must face their own inner darkness and emerge with a greater understanding of themselves. Similarly, in Doctor Strange, the protagonist undergoes a mystical journey of self-transformation, learning to transcend the limitations of his physical body and tap into the hidden powers of the mind. Like the alchemist, Doctor Strange undergoes a process of spiritual awakening, moving beyond the material world to access higher states of consciousness and personal power. In each of these examples, alchemical imagery and symbolism provided a framework for exploring the human experience of transformation, the quest for hidden knowledge, and the search for deeper meaning. Whether through the lens of psychology, art, literature, spirituality, or popular culture, alchemy continued to resonate with those seeking to understand the mysteries of existence and unlock the hidden potential within themselves. In a world that often seems fragmented and disconnected, alchemy offered a timeless symbol of unity, integration, and transformation. A reminder that, just as the alchemist seeks to transmute lead into gold, so too can individuals transmute their inner darkness into light, achieving a higher state of being and understanding. In the heart of the 21st century, as global connectivity and digital media became omnipresent, alchemy found itself reaching new and unexpected audiences. Once the province of secret societies and arcane scholars, alchemical concepts began to spread beyond esoteric circles, weaving their way into the fabric of popular culture, self-help movements, and even technology. The alchemical symbols of transformation, refinement, and spiritual awakening had always contained an allure, but in the modern world, they had gained a renewed, almost mystical relevance. As the collective human experience seemed to grow increasingly complex, people turned to alchemy for insight into the deeper layers of life, seeking not only material gain but also personal and spiritual evolution. This transformative symbolism, deeply embedded in human history, adapted to the times, taking on new forms in modern consciousness. The appeal of alchemy in the 21st century was, in many ways, a direct response to the materialistic, hyperrational world that technology and modern science had helped create. With the rise of artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and advancements in biotechnology, many people began to question the very nature of existence and the role of the human soul in an increasingly mechanized world. The more society advanced in technological terms, the more individuals began to feel a sense of disconnection, not just from the natural world, but from their own inner lives. In response, people sought deeper meaning, searching for a symbolic framework that could unite the material with the immaterial, the scientific with the spiritual. Alchemy, with its rich history of transformation and its promise of uncovering hidden truths, offered an antidote to the emptiness of purely technological existence. One of the key reasons for alchemy's resurgence was the way it acted as a bridge between the mystical and the rational. While modern science was able to explain the mechanics of the universe with remarkable precision, It could not answer the existential questions that lay at the heart of human experience. What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of our suffering? What is the nature of the human soul? Alchemy, in contrast, offered a model for human existence that embraced both the visible and invisible, the physical and the spiritual. The very process of alchemical transformation, where the alchemist worked with the elements to transmute lead into gold, was not simply an intellectual exercise. It was an experiential journey that resonated deeply with human struggles for self-improvement and enlightenment. It spoke to the human desire to transmute something base within the self into something golden and pure. Alchemy's symbolic power continued to resonate in the realm of psychology, particularly in the works of Carl Jung. Jung's theories about the unconscious, the shadow, and the process of individuation were deeply influenced by alchemical imagery. For Jung, alchemy represented a profound metaphor for the process of psychological transformation. Just as the alchemist sought to purify and refine base metals to create something more precious, so too did individuals need to confront their unconscious shadows, the repressed parts of their psyche, in order to become whole. The metaphor of transmutation, of turning lead into gold, became a powerful tool for understanding the human journey of self-realization. This idea of inner purification resonated with many people in the modern age, particularly those involved in psychotherapy or personal development, who were seeking ways to confront their inner darkness and achieve greater psychological integration. As technology began to redefine human life in increasingly radical ways, alchemy's symbolic resonance with the process of transformation continued to grow. In particular, the concept of transmutation, the ability to change or evolve, was embraced by individuals grappling with the rapid pace of change in their own lives. Alchemy's association with transformation became a guiding light for those who sought to navigate personal crises, career transitions, or spiritual awakenings. As people faced challenges related to their careers, relationships, or mental health, alchemical imagery offered a language for understanding their struggles and finding meaning in their experiences. It became a tool for people who were in the midst of personal transformations, helping them to understand that their struggles were part of a larger process of growth, and that even the most difficult experiences had the potential to lead to greater wisdom and insight. In this context, alchemical ideas began to influence the world of self-help and personal development, where they were used to inspire individuals to make profound changes in their lives. Alchemy's focus on purification, integration, and the cultivation of inner wisdom provided a framework for individuals seeking self-improvement. The language of alchemy, with its emphasis on refining the self and transforming inner chaos into harmony, was increasingly used by motivational speakers and life coaches to help people unlock their full potential. Just as the alchemist refined base metals to create gold, so too could individuals refine their inner selves to create a more harmonious and fulfilling life. At the same time, the symbolism of the philosopher's stone, the legendary alchemical object that could turn base metals into gold and grant immortality, took on a renewed importance in spiritual and philosophical circles. For many, the philosopher's stone represented the ultimate achievement in the alchemical process, the realization of one's true potential and the attainment of enlightenment. In this sense, the philosopher's stone was not a literal object to be sought in laboratories, but a metaphor for the higher states of consciousness that could be attained through personal transformation. The search for the philosopher's stone was, therefore, the search for self-realization and spiritual awakening, a quest to achieve a state of inner wholeness and divine connection. As alchemical concepts found their way into the popular consciousness, they also began to influence the creative arts. Writers, filmmakers, and visual artists continued to draw upon alchemical imagery to explore themes of transformation, duality, and the search for hidden knowledge. The concept of alchemical transformation, of taking something base and turning it into something precious, became a powerful narrative tool for artists working in various media. Filmmakers, in particular, began to use alchemical motifs as metaphors for personal and spiritual transformation. In movies like The Matrix and Inception, characters undergo transformative journeys that echo the alchemical process of transmutation. In these films, the protagonists must confront their inner darkness, break free from illusions, and transcend their limitations to reach a higher state of consciousness. These cinematic depictions of transformation, heavily influenced by alchemical symbolism, reflected the growing cultural interest in personal growth and self-discovery. The world of literature, too, continued to embrace alchemical themes. Writers such as Paulo Coelho, who explored themes of self-realization and spiritual awakening in his novel The Alchemist, brought alchemical ideas to a global audience. In Coelho's book, the protagonist's journey to find the philosopher's stone serves as a metaphor for the universal quest for personal fulfillment and enlightenment. The novel resonated with readers around the world who were seeking deeper meaning in their lives, offering them a symbolic framework for understanding their own spiritual journeys. Coelho's work, like that of many other contemporary authors, demonstrated how alchemy's symbolism could transcend its historical roots and speak to modern concerns, offering timeless wisdom for those seeking to navigate the complexities of the human experience. In the digital age, alchemy's symbolism began to take on new forms as well. As the world became increasingly interconnected through the internet, social media, and virtual platforms, the process of transformation became intertwined with the rise of digital culture. People began to use the language of alchemy to describe their experiences in virtual spaces, particularly in the context of personal reinvention. In the world of social media, where individuals carefully curate their identities and present idealized versions of themselves, alchemical imagery provided a powerful metaphor for self-transformation. The idea of refining one's digital self, of turning the base metal of one's online persona into something more genuine or enlightened, became a central theme in the pursuit of digital authenticity. As people sought to craft their digital identities in a world increasingly shaped by algorithms, influencers, and online communities, alchemical metaphors offered a way to understand the process of self-creation in the virtual world. The idea of digital alchemy, transforming the raw materials of one's online presence into something meaningful, profound, and genuine, became an appealing way to frame the search for authenticity in a rapidly changing digital landscape. Alchemy's focus on the refinement of raw materials to create something more beautiful and valuable resonated with those navigating the complexities of modern life, both online and offline. Furthermore, as artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies began to push the boundaries of what it meant to be human, alchemical themes began to be invoked in discussions of technological transmutation. The idea of merging human consciousness with machines, of transcending the limitations of the body and achieving a higher state of being, mirrored the alchemical goal of achieving spiritual and material transformation. As scientists and futurists explored the possibilities of transhumanism, alchemical metaphors began to surface in discussions about the future of humanity. Just as the alchemists sought to transcend the limitations of ordinary existence by creating gold or achieving immortality, so too did futurists and technologists envision a future where humanity could transcend its biological limitations through technology. In this sense, alchemy's symbols of transformation, enlightenment, and transcendence became part of the conversation about the future of human evolution. In a world that often seemed fragmented and disconnected, alchemy's enduring symbolism provided a coherent framework for understanding the process of personal and collective transformation. Whether in the realm of psychology, spirituality, popular culture, or digital identity, alchemical ideas offered a language for navigating the complexities of modern existence. The metaphor of transmutation, the idea that something base can be refined into something pure, spoke to the universal human desire for transformation and self-improvement. In this way, alchemy remained as relevant in the 21st century as it had been throughout its long and storied history, offering both a symbolic and practical guide for those seeking to understand and navigate the mysteries of the human experience. The intersection of alchemy with modern scientific advancements offers a fascinating lens through which we can examine the evolution of human thought and aspiration. The alchemical tradition, which began as an ancient pursuit of turning base metals into gold and finding the secret to eternal life, may seem distant and disconnected from today's scientific breakthroughs. However, a closer inspection reveals that many of the themes central to alchemy have permeated modern science, technology, and even our understanding of the cosmos. Alchemy, far from being a relic of a bygone age, has found new forms of expression in the ongoing quest to unlock the mysteries of the universe. While scientists and technologists may not be seeking to transmute lead into gold, they are very much engaged in the alchemical pursuit of transformation, whether it is the transformation of energy, matter, or even consciousness itself. One of the most striking ways in which alchemy intersects with modern science is through the concept of transformation. Alchemists, throughout their history, sought to transmute base materials into more valuable substances. This idea of transformation, of refining and purifying elements to reveal their hidden potential, echoes in the very heart of scientific inquiry today. Consider the work of physicists, chemists, and biologists who manipulate the building blocks of the universe to create new materials, energy sources, and biological systems. From the manipulation of atoms in particle accelerators to the creation of synthetic life forms, modern science is engaged in a form of alchemy, a process of altering the fundamental components of reality to create something new, more valuable, and often more powerful than before. In physics, the study of energy and matter at the most fundamental levels bears a striking resemblance to the alchemist's search for the philosopher's stone. Alchemists believed that by unlocking the secret processes of nature, they could turn ordinary substances into precious metals. In the world of nuclear physics, scientists have achieved something close to this ideal by learning to manipulate the energy locked within atoms. Through nuclear fission and fusion, we now have the ability to release vast amounts of energy from even the smallest particles of matter. This process of splitting or merging atomic nuclei, whether it is harnessing the energy from uranium in nuclear power plants or creating new elements in particle accelerators, represents a modern equivalent of the alchemical desire to extract the hidden power from matter. In addition to nuclear physics, advances in quantum mechanics have further deepened the alchemical metaphor in modern science. At the quantum level, particles can exist in multiple states at once, and the act of observation itself can influence the behavior of these particles. This concept of reality being fluid and malleable, subject to transformation based on the observer's influence, mirrors the alchemical idea that through knowledge and intention, one could affect the transformation of material substances. Just as the alchemists sought to purify and refine elements to create something new, scientists at the cutting edge of quantum research are beginning to manipulate the very fabric of reality, probing the underlying structure of the universe and potentially unlocking new realms of possibility. The idea that consciousness itself plays a role in shaping reality resonates with the alchemical notion of spiritual transformation, where the individual's mind and intent can lead to profound changes in both the material world and the self. Another striking connection between alchemy and modern science lies in the field of genetics and biotechnology. The quest for immortality, one of the central pursuits of alchemists, has been replaced in the modern age by the scientific goal of extending life and enhancing human capabilities. Alchemists believed that by perfecting certain chemical processes, they could discover the secret to eternal life. Today, scientists are engaged in the pursuit of life extension through genetic engineering, regenerative medicine, and biotechnology. Through advancements in CRISPR technology, stem cell research, and gene therapy, scientists are unlocking the potential to not only cure diseases, but potentially extend human life by manipulating the very code of life itself. The concept of the philosopher's stone, a mythical object that could grant eternal life and transform base metals into gold, has also been reflected in the ongoing search for anti-aging treatments and life-extending technologies. The work being done on telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes that shorten as we age, represents a modern attempt to reverse the aging process, much like the alchemist's desire to halt the inevitable decay of matter. Researchers are investigating ways to lengthen telomeres, regenerate tissue, and repair damaged DNA, all with the ultimate goal of extending the human lifespan. While these breakthroughs are still in their infancy, the possibility of overcoming the biological limits of aging feels like the modern-day equivalent of finding the philosopher's stone, a symbol of ultimate power and transformation. In a similar vein, the advent of artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning provides another interesting parallel to the goals of alchemy. Alchemists sought to unlock hidden knowledge through experimentation and mystical insight, hoping to transcend the limitations of human consciousness and connect with the divine. Today, AI is being developed with the potential to transcend human cognitive limitations, augmenting our mental capabilities and perhaps even altering the way we understand consciousness itself. AI researchers and engineers are working toward creating machines that can think, learn, and reason independently of human influence. While this technological advancement is far from alchemical in its outward form, it taps into the same human desire for transcendence, the longing to create something greater than the sum of its parts. Just as alchemists sought to create gold from base matter, technologists are seeking to create artificial minds that may surpass the abilities of human brains. There is also a profound connection between alchemical symbolism and the modern field of consciousness studies. Alchemy has always been concerned with the transformation of the self, not only in a material sense but in a spiritual and psychological sense as well. The alchemist's journey toward enlightenment was about the purification of the soul, the integration of opposites, and the achievement of wholeness. In modern times, this alchemical process has found a new expression in the field of neuroscience and psychology. Researchers studying consciousness are trying to unlock the mysteries of the human mind, searching for ways to understand and potentially alter the nature of subjective experience. Just as alchemists sought to purify their souls through the transformation of matter, today's scientists are exploring ways to refine the human experience of consciousness, seeking to enhance mental clarity, increase emotional well-being, and transcend the limitations of the ego. The concept of the gold, sought by the alchemist, is often viewed as a symbol of spiritual enlightenment or the highest state of human potential. In the modern era, this idea has been adapted to the pursuit of self-actualization and personal growth. The practice of meditation, mindfulness, and other contemplative techniques seeks to achieve a state of inner peace and harmony, mirroring the alchemical goal of achieving perfection. Neuroscientific research into the brain's capacity for neuroplasticity, the ability to rewire itself through learning and experience, aligns with the alchemical idea of personal transformation. Just as the alchemists sought to refine base materials into gold, individuals today seek to refine their minds and spirits, unlocking their full potential and reaching new levels of consciousness. One of the most fascinating aspects of alchemy's relationship with modern science is the way in which both traditions deal with the concept of the unknown. Alchemists spent centuries working with substances and processes that were largely uncharted, attempting to unlock the mysteries of the natural world through trial, error, and experimentation. In much the same way, modern scientists push the boundaries of knowledge through exploration of the unknown. The search for dark matter, dark energy, and the unification of quantum mechanics with general relativity represents an ongoing quest to understand the fundamental forces of the universe. These mysteries, much like the alchemical secrets, are elusive and remain outside the bounds of current scientific understanding. Yet, much like the alchemist's search for the philosopher's stone, the pursuit of these unknowns is driven by a deep human need to discover and understand the hidden mechanisms of existence. Alchemy's enduring relevance also speaks to a deeper, more existential human need, the desire to find meaning in an increasingly uncertain and chaotic world. As the pace of technological advancement accelerates, society grapples with the implications of new technologies, ethical dilemmas, and questions about the future of humanity. Alchemy, with its emphasis on transformation, purification, and enlightenment, offers a metaphor for personal and collective evolution. The idea that humanity can evolve, refine itself, and transcend its current limitations is a powerful and timeless vision. Whether through scientific progress, technological innovation, or spiritual awakening, the human quest for transformation continues to echo the ancient alchemical pursuit of turning base materials into gold. In the modern world, as in the past, alchemy's symbols and teachings provide a profound roadmap for understanding both the outer and inner worlds. Through its metaphors of transformation and its exploration of hidden knowledge, alchemy speaks to the deep, unspoken desires of the human soul. While the tools and practices of alchemy may have changed, its fundamental message remains the same: that through understanding, refinement, and transformation, we can unlock the deepest mysteries of existence and achieve the highest potential of both the material and spiritual realms. Just as alchemists once believed that through the right combination of elements and intent they could achieve enlightenment and create gold, so too do modern scientists, technologists, and spiritual seekers continue their work in the pursuit of transformation, of both the world around us and the very essence of who we are. As alchemy transitioned from the realms of medieval mysticism to the scientific innovations of the modern era, it left a trail of metaphysical influence that extended far beyond its traditional boundaries. The mystique surrounding alchemy, with its cryptic symbols and secretive rituals, gradually gave way to a more symbolic and psychological understanding. This transformation was largely spurred by the work of early modern philosophers and psychologists, particularly Carl Jung, who sought to understand alchemy not just as an occult practice but as a profound metaphor for the journey of personal and spiritual transformation. Jung's groundbreaking work in the early 20th century laid the foundation for an entirely new way of interpreting alchemy, one that integrated the mystical and psychological dimensions, ultimately contributing to the ways we view inner growth, the shadow self, and the pursuit of wholeness. Jung's interest in alchemy was not merely academic. His study of alchemy was driven by a deep, personal need to understand the human psyche, particularly the process of individuation, which he defined as the integration of the unconscious and conscious aspects of the self. For Jung, alchemical symbols provided a map for understanding the unconscious mind, especially in its more mysterious, shadowy forms. The alchemists, who had once been solely concerned with transforming physical substances like lead into gold, were, in Jung's view, also symbolically engaged in the process of transforming the base, unconscious aspects of the self into something higher and more refined. The stages of alchemical transformation, calcination, dissolution, conjunction, and the creation of the philosopher's stone became potent metaphors for the psychological stages of growth and healing. One of the key contributions of alchemical symbolism to modern psychology lies in the idea of the prima materia, or the first matter. In the alchemical tradition, prima materia was the raw, unformed substance from which all things were created. It was often depicted as a chaotic, formless substance that contained both potential and limitation. In Jungian psychology, the prima materia can be likened to the unconscious mind, a chaotic, often disordered part of the psyche that contains both the potential for greatness and the darkness of repressed memories, desires, and traumas. The journey of individuation, Jung argued, was about bringing order to this chaotic material, integrating the shadow self, and ultimately refining the psyche to achieve a sense of wholeness. Just as the alchemist worked to purify and refine prima materia, so too does the individual undergo a process of psychological purification, confronting the darker, unconscious parts of themselves in the quest for inner balance and integration. This psychological interpretation of alchemy became increasingly influential in the therapeutic world. Therapists and counselors who sought to help individuals navigate their inner worlds began to adopt alchemical imagery as a way to describe the transformation of the self. The idea of turning lead into gold was reframed as a metaphor for psychological healing, the process of transforming negative emotions, destructive patterns, and unresolved trauma into something that contributes to personal growth. The alchemical journey became a symbolic framework for therapy, where the goal was not to eliminate negative aspects of the self, but to integrate and transform them. It was about transmuting internal lead, fear, anger, guilt, shame, into psychological gold, acceptance, wisdom, compassion, and resilience. Alchemy's influence also extended into the realm of spirituality, where it became intertwined with the quest for enlightenment and self-realization. The alchemical journey of transformation mirrored the mystical path taken by many spiritual seekers who sought to transcend the material world and achieve union with the divine. Alchemists, who often saw themselves as divinely inspired, viewed their work as a sacred mission, one that involved not only transforming base metals into precious substances, but also purifying the soul in the process. The creation of the philosopher's stone was viewed as the ultimate spiritual achievement, a symbol of the perfection and enlightenment that could be attained through a life devoted to the work of inner transformation. In the modern age, this pursuit of spiritual awakening has taken on many forms. The language of alchemy, with its focus on the purification of the soul and the search for hidden wisdom, has been adopted by many contemporary spiritual traditions. New Age spirituality, in particular, has drawn heavily on alchemical symbols and ideas, using them to describe the process of personal transformation and spiritual ascension. For adherents of these spiritual paths, the philosopher's stone is not a physical object but a metaphor for the highest state of consciousness, the moment of spiritual enlightenment when the individual achieves a state of unity with the divine. In this context, alchemical imagery serves as a guide for spiritual seekers, helping them to understand their own journeys toward greater awareness, balance, and self-realization. Perhaps one of the most compelling reasons why alchemy continues to resonate in the modern world is its deep connection to the human experience of suffering and transformation. The alchemical process, with its emphasis on purification and refinement, speaks to the universal human desire to make meaning out of hardship. Alchemists believed that the process of transforming base materials into gold was not just a physical endeavor but a spiritual one as well. In their view, the crucible, the vessel in which the alchemical work was done, was a metaphor for the trials and tribulations of life. Just as the alchemist faced the fiery heat of the furnace to achieve their transformation, so too must individuals face the challenges and struggles of life in order to grow and evolve. The alchemical process thus became a symbol of resilience. The idea that through hardship, suffering, and struggle, something beautiful and valuable could emerge. In the modern age, this metaphor of alchemy as a process of transformation through adversity has found expression in the world of personal development and self-help. Motivational speakers, life coaches, and spiritual leaders often draw upon alchemical imagery to inspire individuals to face their challenges and embrace their personal growth. The language of alchemy is used to describe the process of overcoming obstacles, confronting one's fears, and ultimately emerging as a stronger, wiser person. The concept of transmutation, of turning something base into something precious, is particularly powerful in this context, as it speaks to the human capacity for self-improvement and the ability to turn even the most difficult experiences into opportunities for growth and transformation. Moreover, alchemy's profound connection to the idea of transformation has also made it a central theme in art and literature, where it continues to serve as a powerful metaphor for both personal and collective evolution. In literature, alchemy has been employed as a motif for characters undergoing deep, transformative journeys. Whether in the works of Hermann Hesse, who explored the spiritual journey of self-discovery in Steppenwolf, or in Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, the theme of transformation through alchemy runs deep. In these works, characters confront their inner struggles, confront their fears, and eventually come to realize their true potential, often through the metaphor of alchemical transformation. The transformation of base metals into gold, which once seemed purely symbolic, becomes a powerful tool for exploring the human condition, the way in which personal suffering can lead to personal growth, and how self-awareness can lead to enlightenment. In the visual arts, alchemy's influence continues to inspire artists who use the imagery of transmutation to explore themes of inner transformation. Surrealist artists like Salvador Dali, with his melting clocks and distorted realities, captured the alchemical idea of transformation through his paintings. Dali's work, particularly The Persistence of Memory, can be interpreted as an exploration of the fluidity of time and consciousness, where the boundaries of reality and illusion are dissolved in much the same way the alchemist seeks to dissolve the boundaries of the self. The melting clocks, like the base metals in the alchemist's furnace, represent the fluid and mutable nature of existence. Dali's paintings can be viewed as a visual representation of the alchemical process of dissolution and purification, showing how the rigid structures of the material world can be broken down to reveal a deeper, more malleable reality. As we move deeper into the 21st century, the relationship between alchemy and modern life continues to evolve. Alchemy's influence is no longer confined to the secretive rituals of the past or the dusty pages of ancient texts. Instead, it has permeated various aspects of contemporary culture, from the realms of psychology and spirituality to the arts and even popular media. The language of alchemy, its symbols, metaphors, and ideas, serves as a powerful framework for understanding the complexities of human existence. Whether we are navigating the trials of personal transformation, seeking spiritual enlightenment, or creating art that reflects our inner worlds, the lessons of alchemy continue to resonate. In many ways, alchemy's ancient wisdom offers a timeless map for those seeking to understand the deeper mysteries of the self and the world around them. Through its emphasis on transformation, integration, and the pursuit of inner gold, alchemy remains an enduring symbol of the human capacity for change, growth, and enlightenment.